Good evening, everyone.
Hello. All right, 3 minutes, folks.
Loving the virtual background, Mayor Heminger.
It's not virtual. I'm here in town hall. My internet's so bad at home. Y'all are getting me where I usually sit.
You gonna water all those plants? Did everybody die over the COVID years?
So yeah, I'm embarrassed to say my 3 plants in here are all silk, so no watering required.
You know what?
Amy, sound check. Okay, Dan. Thank you.
I can hear you. I'm a plant murderer myself, although I just had an orchid rebloom, which is shocking, but very welcome.
I'm actually very good with plants, but I just figured I was going to be inconsistent here, so goodness. Okay.
So odd to be getting ready for a council meeting when it was still light out.
Was that changed next week? We have daylight savings time on Sunday. I never remember where it goes.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, 1 minute, folks, getting on. Hey, Marie's down the hall.
Good evening.
Hello.
About 1 minute.
Who are we missing? Got everybody? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, we got us all. So moving around. Okay. Are we ready?
1 minute or
Okay.
about 15 seconds maybe.
Oh.
And you're ready.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 10th, 2021 meeting of the Chapel Hill Town Council. Tonight, we have Spanish interpreters from the beginning of the meeting through the end of item number 5, during which we'll have a second reading to consider an application for conditional zoning for 1200 and 1204 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Please call 919-969-5156 and enter code, oh my, you want this code in here, it's on the screen if you can't see it, 887-6452# for interpretation. After the tone, say your name and press pound. Will one of the interpreters please make this announcement in Spanish for us?
Yes. Esta noche vamos a contar con interpretación simultánea entre el inglés y el español desde el comienzo de la reunión hasta el fin del número 5 del orden del día, o sea, la petición para un cambio de zonificación en 1200 y 1204 de la Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Se puede accesar la interpretación llamando al número que está en pantalla, o sea, llame al 919-969-5156 para obtener la interpretación en español. Inserte el código siguiente seguido por la tecla del numeral. El código para accesar la llamada es 887 6452. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you so much for helping us. We have wonderful interpreters helping us this evening. We have 8 items coming forward for discussion tonight, beginning with an update about the COVID response that our ongoing response to the COVID from our staff. Also on the agenda are the Orange County Partnership to End Homelessness, the second quarter affordable housing report, introduction to the issuance of bonds to fund parks and rec, public safety, streets and sidewalk projects, and that are all in our capital improvements plan. Discussion of the number of lanes and parking technology for the East Rosemary parking deck, and several development review matters. So, for those of us who've joined on Zoom tonight, we want to make sure that you know that public input is important to us. After the presentations and council clarifying questions have been completed, Mayor Pro Tem Parker will call 2 names at a time so the second person can be ready. When it's your turn, you can turn on your video and unmute yourself. Speakers are asked to stay within your allotted time of 3 minutes. If there's anyone else wishing to speak, please use the raise your hand function on the toolbar, or #9 by your phone. There is one exception tonight. Because we have already held 3 public sessions and closed the public hearing and accepted public comment for an additional 24 hours and already held a first reading on the item, the 1200 MLK and 1204 Martin Luther King, there is not a public comment will not be allowed this evening on that item. It will be clarifying questions from council members, and presentations from staff and applicant, and then any final comments and a vote. We know this issue is very important to our community and appreciate all the input we have received through the public hearing process, and we will be making a decision this evening. So, in keeping with state laws about virtual meetings, we will need to do a roll call. So as I call your name, please unmute yourself and answer with I, present, or however you'd like to identify yourself. Mayor Pro Tem Michael Parker.
Here.
Councilmember Jess Anderson.
Here.
I'm going to get a mouthful, sorry. Councilmember Alan Boynton.
Here.
Councilmember Hong Bin Gu.
Here.
Councilmember Tai Nguyen.
Here.
Councilmember Amy Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Karen Stegman.
Here.
And Mayor Pam Heminger is also here. Thank you for that. Okay, I have a couple of announcements. Let's see where they went. Sorry, here we go. All right, bear with me here. Community Safety Listening Session. The town of Chapel Hill is hosting 4 listening sessions open to all members of the community to share their experiences and ideas for making Chapel Hill a safer and more inclusive community, and to engage the community in an important conversation. The first is scheduled for this Saturday, March 13th, from 2 to 3:30 p.m. These will be virtual meetings, just a friendly reminder. There will be a Spanish language session on Tuesday, March 16th at 7 p.m., followed by 2 more. And please check the calendar that'll be on there. Additional details and registration information are available in both English and Spanish on the town calendar page. This is an important community conversation, and we want to hear from everyone, and we hope you will join us. And council members, you know that you are welcome to join these listening sessions as well, so I encourage you to do so. Applications for advisory boards. The town is seeking volunteers to provide fresh perspectives on important local issues. Applications to serve on one of our advisory boards are being accepted through next Monday, March 15th. No experience is required on most slots. Some is on, there's some certain ones on certain pieces that are. Childcare and transportation assistance are available, and all town meetings are currently being held virtually. If you have questions, please email advisoryboards@townofchapelhill.org or connect with one of your council members. That would be good. Next week, the council meeting will be a work session starting at 6:30 p.m. I wanted to announce that we have our NAACP youth are holding a vigil this Saturday at Peace and Justice Plaza to remember Breonna Taylor, who died on March 13th. At 5 p.m. We want this to be a COVID safe, so please wear your mask. It'll be outdoors, but you're welcome to attend. And finally, at the request of the Orange County Visitors Center, we've been asked to share that March 12th is James Taylor's birthday. Lori Palicelli and her team are working on grant opportunities to incorporate James's life and music into the new visitor center. And this would be a very exciting addition to downtown. So just to share with you, so happy birthday, James Taylor. All right, back. Do any other council members have announcements? Sorry, I got all spread out here. Okay. Do we have any members of the public wishing to speak on items not on the agenda this evening?
We do. We have Mr. Stephen Fleck has signed up to speak. Is Mr. Fleck with us this evening?
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Mayor Pam. I'm Steve Fleck. I live on Mount Bolus, and I'm representing Estes Neighbors, an advocacy group of over 12 neighborhoods who are concerned about and certain to be affected by the proposed Aura development at the intersection of Estes and MLK Boulevard. The neighborhoods concerned include Somerset Huntington, Coker Hills and Coker Woods, Forest Creek, Hidden Hills and Hidden Hills West, Estes Hills, Lake Forest, Ironwoods, Windsor Circle, Mount Bolus, and Colonial Heights. We also have representation from Amity Methodist Church. Estes Drive is really just a two-lane road that is one of the town's very few east-west corridors is already over capacity. The corner of MLK and Estes is notoriously high in traffic accidents. The Aura proposal as it stands would surely increase congestion and also jeopardize public safety for two schools, the town library, and a large number of east-west commuters along the Estes corridor and in the various adjacent neighborhoods. On Monday, we wrote to the town manager, and thank you, sir, for replying swiftly, requesting that the town delay the review process for the proposed Aura conditional zoning use permit. We copied you on that letter. We object to proceeding with the advisory board reviews without fulfilling the request promised to the residents by the town planning staff. Granted, they're overworked. Still, 5 months is a very long time for the oldest of these. Among the principal unaddressed requests are, first, answers to questions posed at the November 10th information session, where the acting planning director then promised a response. We've received no answers to date, although we are assured that staff is working on them. We're awaiting answers also, number 2, to an additional 14 questions concerning traffic at the February 10th, 2021 Aura traffic public meeting. No response yet. Number 3, it's essential that the public and members of advisory boards see the town traffic model applied to Aura. We've been promised this model since last November. It will help everyone to understand the cumulative traffic impact on Estes Drive of all the recent development in town, as well as the proposed addition of some 600 new cars at Aura. No date's been set yet for delivery of this town traffic model. We're very concerned that advisory boards are meeting, therefore, now with incomplete information about this very large proposed development. If this continues, the town will be denying important traffic information to the many affected citizens of this proposal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I don't see any raised hands. That
Okay.
was the only one.
All right. Any other last call for citizen comments and any petitions? Ms. Gu?
Do we need to receive and refer Mr. Flex? Or is that just a comment?
I think it was a comment. I know some answers were sent and I know they're working on the modeling. And it's being scheduled, so I'm not sure if it's a petition. Ms. Gu, are you back with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
So I just want to submit a petition to preserve low-income single-family housing community by designating a restricted residential manufactured home zoning district. So in recent years, low-income family housing in Chapel Hill is facing increasing danger of elimination. They are threatened of eviction by predatory developers and exploited to push for egregious development projects. Designating restricted residential manufactured home zoning district is an important regulatory step to stabilize market from excessive speculation by real estate developers and protect our working class and low-income families in our community. The families in manufactured home provide essential services to the town, working as hospital janitors, construction workers, housekeepers, and landscape workers. Manufactured home allow the people and families who desire to live in a close-knit single-family community, but are limited by resources to live in Chapel Hill with access to transit, healthcare, and good school. It's a way to pursue the American dream that would otherwise be out of their reach. So therefore, I would like to petition the town to designate a restricted residential manufactured home zoning district to protect the health, safety, and the well-being of the low-income families and preserve the community character of our existing manufactured home community. North Carolina General Statute provides land use regulatory power to local government and a latitude of legislative tools to accomplish this goal. Our neighboring Wake County has a residential mobile home district zone with restricted use to manufactured homes, single family, and accessory uses. Designating restricted residential manufactured home district in our LUMO is a powerful regulatory apparatus within our land use police power in our multi-pronged housing strategy to protect and preserve low-income families in our community. Okay, that's the petition.
Since this would be referred to our attorney, I've asked if she would make a comment, please, this evening.
Mayor, are you asking specifically if I have a comment about receiving this petition?
Yes, please.
Okay. Your council procedures manual is not very specific on the receipt of petitions from council members. What is typically contemplated is petitions from members of the public, which I realize Councilmember Gu is also a member of the public. So, there is a provision about receiving petitions from council members. It usually has to do when there is a request to staff for research. So the upshot of it is, I believe it would be in this council's sole discretion whether to receive a petition of this type from a council member, and I would, proceed in the exercise of your discretion.
Okay.
So so you're saying that it can only request the information from the staff so can this petition to request the staff to research information with regard to restricted manufactured home zoning district?
No, the language is the same language that I sent you earlier in the day. Okay. And it says that typically a petition from a council member would be with respect to asking staff to do something, but it's not restrictive in that regard. And so I would just advise that council exercise its discretion about receiving a petition as it normally would.
Okay.
And Councilmember Gu has already stated the substance of her petition, but in all such matters, I would just caution that petitions that have to do with a matter that's currently on the agenda, which this one doesn't directly have to do with the matter on the agenda, that could cause confusion, might be a part of an exercise of that discretion. But since your council procedures manual doesn't address it any more specifically than that, then I think it is very much an exercise of your own judgment.
Can I ask, Anne, does receive and refer indicate that council is authorizing staff time be spent on the researching the petition?
I think what it receive and refer in this instance would then be a matter of the manager deciding to whom to refer it, or you could refer it directly to me if that's what you chose.
It just stopped.
Yeah.
You.
I can't get it.
And so I think that's, you can specify. But if it's generally received and referred, that gives the manager a lot of discretion as to how to proceed with it. And it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that this particular petition has been addressed in some measure already. So it may be one that, wouldn't take quite as much time. But that's not up to me.
Well, that was my question. I thought this question had already been answered. And could you give clarity on, I thought that we were told that this was not a feasible path forward. So I guess that's what I'm interested in understanding, not to take too much more time on this, but that would be helpful.
So I think to say that it hasn't been, that council has been advised it's not a feasible path forward, has not been done formally because it's not been in the form of a petition that is before you in that regard. And so there hasn't been a formal assessment. I have addressed it with planning and I have discussed it. And, we have an opinion about it. Now it's in the form of a petition. So if this council wanted to refer it back to us again for something more formal that we could submit to you as council, then I would say you have discretion to ask us to do that.
So,
and I think I have talked to some of you individually about it, but I wouldn't, as you have asked me to, and Councilmember Gu and I have talked about it, and I'm happy to repeat the same analyses that I've made or do more if you like. But I would say that whether to initiate further discussions or analyses of it is what you are deciding to do right now.
So Mayor Heminger, seems to be having further technical difficulties. She asked me to take over. So let me just ask a fairly pointed question. And you've looked at this petition, you've spoken with us. If we were to refer it, it would be referred to you. So can you give us your opinion on the merits of this petition now in order to save some time going forward, either save your time or staff's time?
Michael, let me look really quickly at your council procedures manual about whether I feel comfortable doing that for just a moment, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So one of the provisions, and of course we're in a little bit of a gray area here, but one of the provisions in your procedures manual says it shall take a unanimous vote of the council members present for a petition to be acted upon immediately upon its presentation. So, you could interpret that as if I'm going to give you my conclusion, then we're acting on that petition. But I can tell you generally that I wouldn't be able to give you a completely thorough answer to the question about this petition, because I'm not sure that I entirely understand the substance of it. But what I have shared already with those of you is that I'm not sure it's what we know is, Michael, if I say anything more, I am potentially veering into territory that is otherwise on your agenda tonight.
Thank you.
I don't feel comfortable doing that.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry, I missed most of that, but what is council's pleasure here?
Yeah, I don't think we've decided on council's pleasure. I think I think there's been a lot of discussion back and forth between council members, between staff, with Councilmember Gu on this. And while I applaud her tenacity and her desire to find good solutions for this problem, nothing that I have heard in any of those discussions indicate that this is offering real protections for our mobile home park communities. Those putting on a zoning overlay is something that any council can undo at any time, right? We can't bind future councils to that decision. So I think for me, I don't want to give the community the appearance that I think that this is something that will really help and that we should pursue. I think we've looked at it. I think everybody wished that it would offer that kind of protection. And from what I have heard so far, from many people, it does not do that. So I don't want to raise false hopes by continuing to pursue this issue.
Thank you for stating that. Any other discussion? If there's no motion on the floor, then we will move on to the consent agenda. Ms. Gu?
Yeah, well, I think that there are legal experts that in this area, both in affordable housing, land use law, including the faculties and the professors at the UNC School of Law. I think that, and some other institutions as well, and there are some, well, especially the people who are involved with the other communities of land use and planning, where that they do have this restricted manufactured home district. I think that we own it to our community, that to explore, given that we all want to preserve that community. We think that it's not like we want to phase them out at a certain time. We actually do value them or want them to be part of our community. I think at least they deserve our time and our staff time to at least look into that. It is something has done by other communities. It may be that we may conclude that that does not apply to us. It does not help us. I think that's fine, but I think we own it to our community, both the communities in the mobile home parks and the community at large in Chapel Hill, to at least to spend time and pursue that direction, because it has been done. And there are legal experts, and I can provide the references to you that who are established, respected members of the legal community that think that actually is going to be helpful to us. I think we at least owe them for our staff to explore that possibility.
Thank you for sharing your opinion. I know we have been exploring many of those. Mr. Boynt, you want to wrap us up so we can move on to the consent agenda, please?
Yeah, just very quickly. My understanding is that faculty at UNC School of Law and UNC School of Government, as well as resources at both institutions, have been consulted on this particular issue. And what they've said is what Ms. Ryan essentially said about the mobile home overlay districts, that ultimately they don't really do much to protect the residents, which is all of our chief concern here. Thanks.
Right. Thank you. We will move on to the consent agenda. I would say on the consent agenda, please.
I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
To move by Ms. Anderson, second by Mr. Nguyen. It'll need a roll call vote. Mayor Pro Tem Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Boynt.
Aye.
Ms. Gu.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
The mayor says aye as well. Thank you very much. You have some information items in your packet, and that takes us to item number 4, an update on the town efforts to respond to the COVID-19 crisis. Oh, we have Ms. Stewart with us. Yay, welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for having me. And so I don't have any slides for you this time. So I'm just going to use my talking points and talk through, and then I will invite any of my responder partners that want to chime in and add to anything that maybe I left off or overlooked. So I've seen Chief Blue and Kelly popped in, and Chief Harris. So I'm amongst friends now as I talk about this COVID response. So as of today, our Orange County case count total 7,829. And unfortunately, we're now at 96 deaths. I will say that our metrics and our case count is moving in the right direction, and it has been for the last couple of weeks. Over the last 7 days, we've seen only 62 new cases. That is so exciting. It's meaning we are now in the single digits with what we're averaging for new cases each day. So we're down to about 9 new cases each day. And I have to tell you, we've not seen those numbers in a very long time. So I am hopeful and encouraged, and I do believe that the vaccine efforts are working. we've seen a drastic decrease in some of the outbreaks in our long-term care facilities. In fact, we just have one in outbreak status as of today. And basically we are just counting down. They have to get through 28 consecutive days without a new case, and I believe they're going to make it. So it's showing me that the vaccine works. That was one of the first groups that was vaccinated according to the priority group framework. It was the long-term care facilities, residents, and staff. So the fact that we are no longer seeing these outbreaks in those facilities is very encouraging, and it tells us that the vaccine is working. So with our metrics all going in the right direction, we have regained the county alert system, the 3-tier where we were red, orange, or yellow. So I was very happy with the last county alert system report that Orange County is now back in the yellow tier, meaning we still have significant transmission, but that is the lowest tier where you can be. So in honor of that, I wore my yellow sweater today because I was really happy for us to be back in the yellow tier. So that was planned. I'm very excited about that. So again, good news on that front. Some of the vaccine data, I know this is of importance and interest to you all. So in Orange County, again, as of today, it looks like about 15.8% of our county population has been fully vaccinated. So those are the folks that have received their first and second doses to date. For Orange County Health Department, when I look at the number of vaccines that we have given, kudos to the team. They're doing a great job. But to date, we have done 5,820 first doses and 3,524 second doses. So based on the allocation that we get, it's still relatively small each week. I think we're doing a great job. And as soon as we get our vaccine in each week, we are vaccinating folks and getting it out within the 7-day period. So again, everyone has been working really hard with the vaccine campaign. When I look at some of the data around race and demographics and who's being vaccinated, you have 2 sources where you can find this demographic information. So if you go to the North Carolina DHHS site, you can click now and choose the county, and it will give you some of that demographic information about overall for the whole county, how we're doing. And that includes what all the providers are doing. And then the Orange County Health Department, we just launched a new site. And so we have demographic data broken down based on the vaccines that we are given. And so that will include folks that are not residents here in Orange County, but again, it's just the population that we've actually given a shot to. So I'll share with you for the state's data in Orange County. We've really done a better job with our Hispanic population, not perfect, but I expect that number to increase as we move through the priority group. So we're now at 4.8% of our Latinx Hispanic population that has been vaccinated. When I look at American Indians, it's still just 0.3%. So we got some work to do there. Asian population, 6.2%. Our Black and African American population, 8.9%. White population, 78.7%. And then we have data missing and other, it's about almost 5%. So that's the breakdown for Orange County in general. When I look at demographics about vaccination for Orange County Health Department and the folks that we've served, our Hispanic population, we've done 6.51%. The Black and African American community, 21.5%. Asian community, 3.62%. White, 69.2%. And then other makes up about 4.7%. So we are trying to stick to the equity plan, and we're reaching out and trying to reach some of our historically underserved populations and being very intentional about our vaccination efforts. We continue to work with lots of our community partners and all the other human service departments throughout the county. So the last couple of weeks, we've done some targeted efforts with El Centro and reached out to, again, boost our numbers with our Latinx community. We know they have been hardest hit with this COVID pandemic. So we've done some targeted outreach with that group. We've also kind of jumped ahead, and we've also started vaccinating some of our homeless and unsheltered community members. And so we have a really robust homeless coordinator coalition. So they were able to identify and tell us where we can find some of the community members that are unsheltered and homeless. So we've started to do a mobile vaccination effort and go out and reach them and make sure that they are also protected. As we move into group 3, that's a really large group. And so we are also working with businesses. And so many of our environmental health specialists have beat the streets and the pavement down on Franklin Street, going and talking to some of the smaller businesses and restaurants, particularly those that employ, people of color, maybe limited English proficiency. So we are doing targeted outreach and trying to make sure we reach them to, one, we had to do a lot of education and answer some questions about the vaccine, and then try and set them up on the list so they could be vaccinated once appointment slots are available. With the vaccine, I think the last time I talked to you, our base allocation was about 600 doses a week. We were getting 400 for our general population and then 200 with the focus on equity. That has decreased, and so we're now down to 500 doses a week for our allocation. So that's for this last 3 weeks, and we got word that we'll go an extra week as the state anticipates getting more information from the federal government about a overall allocation for North Carolina. But it sounds like good news. It sounds like the state is expecting to receive a significant increase in allocation. I don't know if the health department will get more or if it will be distributed out to some other providers across the county. And I'm fine with it either way, because the goal is we just want to get folks vaccinated. And so if it means getting it out to more of the physician offices, more of the pharmacies, I support it. The goal, again, is just to get everyone that wants a shot vaccinated as quickly as possible. Let's see what else. We got a lot here. A question that I've been getting a lot: has the health department received the Johnson & Johnson 1-dose vaccine? So we have not received the allocation at the health department, but we have received some here in the county. I know UNC Health, they received some of the Johnson & Johnson 1-dose vaccine. So again, no idea if and when local health departments will get it. That may be used for some of the other community providers because it is easier to store. It doesn't require the ultra low cold storage, and it's just 1 dose. And so again, I am okay with it. I just want folks to get the vaccine out there. I want folks to get it. So we'll take whatever they send to us. Big news for this week, you all probably have already seen it, but CDC did put out some guidance on what folks that have received full vaccination are allowed to do at this point. So just to make sure we're clear, you are considered to be fully vaccinated 2 weeks after your 2nd dose or 2 weeks after the Johnson & Johnson 1-dose vaccination. So once you wait your 2 weeks, you're considered to be fully vaccinated. And with that, CDC says that fully vaccinated people can now visit with other fully vaccinated people indoors without wearing the mask and physical distancing. They can visit with unvaccinated people from a single household who are at low risk for severe COVID disease indoors, again, without masking or physical distance. And they are now allowed to refrain from quarantine and testing after a known exposure to a COVID positive if they remain asymptomatic. So I think that's encouraging for folks that have been fully vaccinated. You're starting to see a little bit of ease and how we slowly are able to transition and get back into whatever normal is. I don't know what that is really anymore. So I'm happy, again, cautiously optimistic, because there's still a lot of leeway in there to define, well, who's considered low risk of severe COVID, disease. And so my preference would be, I would say, as your local health director, I would say if you're going to visit with folks that are unvaccinated, I don't know, I would say maybe still maintain the distancing. If you can, do it outdoors. So I just think it's a lot of interpretation around who is considered low risk. So I just want the community to still maintain a little caution there. And so even though folks are fully vaccinated, they still should continue to wear the mask whenever they're out in public, continue to do the 6 feet distancing, of course, keep up your hand hygiene. Again, if they're going to be in groups with folks outside of their household and they're going to be in large gatherings, you know, out in public, you still, again, wear that mask and keep the distance. But we still want folks to avoid really large, medium-sized and large in-person gatherings because we're not yet at a place where we have, you know, full herd immunity in our community. We still got a ways to go. We're headed there, but we're not there yet. And then the folks should still get tested if you have COVID-like symptoms, even if you've been fully vaccinated. Still go and get a test just to make sure you haven't been exposed and developed the infection. Another question I think folks had was, why are those with the chronic conditions not higher on the priority list? And again, that's not something that we set at the local level. We are following North Carolina DHHS and their priority framework. But I believe their rationale would be, you know, they feel like as we vaccinated folks in these first 3 priority groups, I'm sure we've captured several folks that have a chronic condition. So some of our healthcare workers in the long-term care facility, we call, I'm sure, quite a few, our 65 plus, and now that we're in group 3 with the essential workers, there are still many folks that have an existing chronic condition. And so they had another criteria that they met, and so they were eligible for a shot. At the rate that we're moving through the groups, I anticipate we will get to the medical condition group probably sooner than March 24th. If you watch the governor's briefing this week, he didn't say it explicitly, but he kind of alluded to the fact that, well, as we get more vaccine, we may be able to move and start vaccinating folks in another group. And so at the health department, we'll move with the state as they open up. And so we'll just continue to take folks, add them to our list. We still have a waiting list, but we have some new software that was implemented this week. And so it allows us to, in a more efficient and robust fashion, work through those on our wait list and offer those appointment slots to folks a little quicker. And so I'm hopeful, and again, as the opportunity comes up for appointments, we can blast it out, get folks to take it, and we'll just keep moving and working our list down as we get vaccine. We are hopeful that maybe our allocation will increase, but I realize if it doesn't increase to us at the health department, maybe that means that some more partners and providers in the community are now getting some allocation.
Thank you for sharing with us.
Yeah.
Appreciate that very much. Ms. Drayton, are you also giving us a report?
No, ma'am, not this week. Quintana's the main star of the show.
Okay. So do we have any members of the public wishing to speak on this subject?
We do. We have one individual, Tess Sharp has signed up to speak.
And if she's on via the phone, if she can press *9 to let us know, that would be great. Otherwise, I don't see her on the list.
Okay. Council members, did you have any questions for Ms. Stewart? Ms. Gu?
Yeah, well, first I just want to say thank you so much. The way that we distribute our vaccines, I think I have heard from people like debating about, is it more important to get out of the vaccine as fast as possible, or to make sure that we have equitable distribution? I think in our county, we're just doing both. So I think I'm very encouraged. And the other day I was at this event supported by El Central, and see all the cars that are lining up. I just feel such a hope, like just watching that's going on and see the people getting really excited and just like see, here is the next phase. There's a way out of this. So I'm just being so grateful. So thank you for doing that. Just keep doing your good work. We're just very appreciative for all the things that you do.
Thank you, Ms. Gu. And I meant to say this before I stop with my update. Thank you, Ms. Gu, because I heard that you visited the site on Saturday and you were gracious enough to bring refreshments for the volunteers and the staff that were out there. So thank you so much for that. It was very much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight, but mostly thank you for everything you and your team are doing and the manner you're doing it in. I know you get pelted with questions from us at the MAC meetings and everywhere else, and I know that you spend a lot of time answering questions while trying to do your work simultaneously, so we appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Thanks for joining us. Stay safe.
Thank you too.
All right. All right. That brings us to item number 5, which is the second reading to consider an application for conditional zoning at 1200 and 1204 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. And I want to say before we begin this item that it's a point of order because, again, I said it earlier, but because we've already held 3 public hearings, we have closed the public hearing and accepted public comment for the additional 24 hours afterwards and held a first reading. There is no public comment this evening on this item. Again, we know this item is very important to the community and we appreciate all the input we have received from folks out there. So tonight we'll get presentation, a quick presentation from staff, from the applicant, any clarifying questions that have not been asked before, and then we will come back to council comments and a vote. All right. Mr. Sudal, are you helping us this evening?
I am. Thank you, Mayor. Give me just a second to share my screen and make sure that you all can see it properly. All right. Can you see that? Yes. All right.
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Michael Sudal with the Chapel Hill Planning Department. I have 6 slides and it'll take about 3 minutes to present this second reading of the conditional zoning application for 1200 MLK. As a brief summary of the proposal, the 13.9 acre site is located on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard across from the intersection with Northfield Drive. It is currently zoned residential 4 and neighborhood commercial, but the applicant is requesting a rezoning to office institutional 2 for the self-storage and mobile home park and expanding neighborhood commercial for the gas station. Demolition or replacement of the existing gas station is proposed with the self-storage building to be constructed behind it. The application has been reviewed by town staff, presented to the advisory boards, and the public hearing has been opened and closed. At the February 24th meeting, the council voted 5-3 in favor of approving the project. However, this did not meet the 2/3 majority required to pass during the first reading. As such, it has come back before you tonight for a second reading and action. Since the February 24th meeting, 2 clarifications that were requested by council have been incorporated into Ordinance A. Condition number 26 has been clarified to state that during the initial 15-year period, the developer chooses to reduce the approved 83 homes to a minimum of 73 or anywhere in between. A displacement mitigation plan approved by the town manager will be required. Condition number 29 has also been clarified to apply only to dedicated short-term rentals. The applicant has also requested that a revision be made to Ordinance A. Condition number 24 has been revised to include a freeze in rental rate increases until April 1st, 2024, and to include a 2-year review schedule for comparing the lot rental rates with Raleigh and Charlotte. These rates must be found to be within 5% of the Raleigh and Charlotte markets or be reduced to match. With that in mind, the recommendation before you tonight is that council consider the following: enact or deny the conditional rezoning, adopt or deny the revocation of special use permits. So thank you for your time, and now I'd like to hand it over to the applicant to say a few words.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sudal. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Again, I'm Dan Jewell with Coulter Jewell Timms. As Mr. Sudal said, we, after hearing continued concerns about the sincerity of the owners to keep the park open, we've decided to strengthen the proffers with the following things. First and foremost, as he said, rather than the 4-year market rate review and a 15% adjustment, we would like to offer to modify that to every 2-year do a market review, and if it's out of line by 5%, do an adjustment. And secondly, as part of that same stipulation number 24, we would like to proffer that the rents, the current rent rates, will be frozen, will be flat for another 3 years from the date of approval. So the rents have not been increased since The owner bought the park 2 years ago. So that will mean in total that there's a minimum of 5-year guarantee that the rents will not have increased in the park. Furthermore, because we do follow things online and do hear what's going on, we know there's been some additional concern about the size of the storage building. So we are voluntarily agreeing to reduce the size of the building by 10,000 square feet. And that square footage will come out of the total floor area, and it will be done in such a way that the dimension of the building parallel to Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard will be made commensurately smaller to make up that 10,000 square feet. So please take those into consideration. Again, we're very sincere about keeping the park open and hearing the community concerns about scale. Thank you for your attention, and we are here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there clarifying questions from council that have not been asked before? Ms. Gu? You're muted.
Well, it's great that you're considering to freeze the rent for 3 more years, and also adjust the range of rent increase if it's necessary to 5% instead of 15%. So is there the way, would you be open to the idea of having community members like the mobile home park community members or our housing board or Affordable Housing Alliance, some representative to be part of your team in deciding what is the adjustment, what's the range of rent adjustment?
No, Ms. Gu, we cannot do that, but thank you for asking.
Okay. So you're saying that you or the owner will be solely responsible in identifying what is the market rate. The community members do not have a say in that designation. What's the market rate?
To clarify, the market rate adjustment will be based on a market analysis done by an appraiser, and that will be the basis for the determination. But you're correct. The residents will not be involved in that conversation or that determination.
I mean, is there any other community groups, let's say Housing Alliance or Affordable Housing Alliance, a housing board, or will they be like have a member or have be part of the committee when we're reevaluating the rent, what the market rate is supposed to be? Because appraisers can have very different opinion with regard to what's the market rate is or should be. Are you open to the idea of having some committee involvement when this market rate is being decided?
No, ma'am. This is again. It's not a committee decision. It is a business decision, but by the owners of the property. But to clarify, the stipulation does say that the analysis will be sent to the town attorney for corroboration.
Okay. So another question I have heard from the community is they worried about the safety of the inside of the community. There are concerns with the MOK. There is high serious traffic incidence rate that involve pedestrians. So that has been raised. But I think the residents inside of the mobile home car park, they are really worried about what the road construction is going to be, because so far in the document that we are not seeing what kind of road structure is going to be, whether or not there are sidewalks, whether or not that the residents can move safely from their mobile home to like the bus stops or go out, either riding a bicycle or walk there. Is there any way that we can review or the community can review what this road structure or the sidewalks that is going to be?
The plan submitted with our application does clearly show sidewalks associated with all of the new construction on the park, so that there's a safe way to walk out to the front, out to the store, out to Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and more importantly, to walk out to the existing bus stop and the future BRT stop. So those are shown on our plans.
Well, those sidewalks are there in front. Well, this is the comments that made by the Transportation and the Connectivity Board. They would like to see a plan with safe connection from the front of the property to inside of the mobile home. So I don't know if our staff know the answer for that. I would like to hear, because that is the comment by the Transportation and the Connectivity Board.
We have not received a plan of any kind such as that. The applicant hasn't provided that to us.
Okay. Okay. So another is, what is this? Yeah. So another question I heard from the mobile home park residents is that they are worried both for their experience in this park, and some residents have their sharing experience of other mobile home residents that also owned by Stackhouse about this community rules. They're saying the current community rules, they're almost exclusively referring to what things that the residents cannot do. So they're worried that in the future, if those rules that has been like added with things that's very difficult for the residents, like the number of parking. They're sharing with me that they're worried that in some of the mobile home parks, the parking, that there is a towing company coming in to check on their parking and giving high ticket fines for their parking situations, or their pets and all these things. When those kind of disputes or the road conditions, that the residents have concerns with potholes or submerged roads inside their mobile home park, is there are you open to the idea of having a committee, of like mobile home conservation committee, that is participated by the residents or our Affordable Housing Alliance or Empowerment or El Centro, those nonprofit organizations, and as well as the owner, and then there is opportunity for the residents to voice their concerns and have their concerns being addressed. Are you open to that idea?
Ms. Gu, appreciate those comments. This doesn't really seem to be a zoning issue. This seems to be an operational issue between the residents and the property owner, and they always have the opportunity to let the property owner know if they have concerns and have those discussions.
Well, because it's a conditional zoning agreement, so I'm hoping that, well, especially if we're given the size of the project, we and the residents, especially the ones that are currently living in the mobile home park, they have concerns about what the living condition is going to be. So I'm hoping that there is some mechanism for the residents to voice their concerns, and that those nonprofit organizations will have an opportunity to come in to intervene, or being the moderator, or somehow like to have their concerns addressed. Are you open to that kind of like regular review, kind of community conservation committee idea?
And again, this is not, we don't believe this is a zoning matter. This is a matter between the residents and the property owner. So I cannot commit to that at this time.
Okay.
Ms. Gu, can you please wrap up? We've
so
put your questions in ahead of time, and you've gone beyond our usual.
So last question is, if the property has been, like there's a change hands of the change owner, would you, is there any promise, or is it what kind of reassurance that we can give to the residents if they're being relocated? Are you open to the idea of relocation package if something like that happens?
Well, we have in the stipulations that it transfers with the property. If the property were to sell within 15 years, the stipulations stay with the property. So the agreement now is for 15 years. And so there aren't going to be people being relocated during that 15-year time period.
Well, but like we had experienced with other projects, Carroll Village, the property owner can always come back and say, for various reasons, that they want to change the original plan. If that happens, are you open to the idea to negotiate with the residents and give them proper relocation package or other like protection that will make residents feel like they will not be put in the same condition again, that the property owner wants to develop something else and they will be under threat of being evicted with no protection whatsoever. So they are hoping that there is some protection this time that we can put in if something happens in the future, that they feel like they are being protected.
Ms. Gu, appreciate that, but that's exactly why the covenants were put in place and that we have agreed to record them within a date certain of the approval of the conditional zoning.
And the council would have to also agree to change them if that. So the two parties would have to be in agreement. And I don't think a future council is going to change the 15-year agreement that was fought so hard to get.
If the council is in the same position as we're in now, I think they will be under the pressure if there's no protection for the residents.
They can't evict they can't evict. It doesn't work that way. All right. Any other questions? Okay, I bring you back to council comments then, please. Ms. Anderson?
I'm glad to see that this project is slightly better for the residents, although we know it's not enough. This is not a long-term affordable housing solution, and we need to actually do the thing that we endlessly talk about, which is actually working with the county and the other towns in Orange County and the partners to actually create a mobile home park plan and displacement strategy. This is not our only mobile home park. And if we're lamenting how we wish we had better options when the next predatory applicant comes along, that would really just be a shame. So instead of politicizing a really tragic situation further, I hope we all start doing some reflecting on how we can bring our intentions into better alignment with our impact. Generally, giving away all our leverage at the beginning of a process is unwise and terrible negotiating. In this case, it means that the residents who are very important members of our community are put in a horrible position, no matter the outcome of this vote. And that shouldn't be acceptable to any of us. We didn't do our jobs. Let's take this experience and let it spur us into meaningful action in ways that help us mitigate and avoid this situation in the future, since it's coming at us again and again and again, no matter what else we fill our agendas with in the meantime.
Mr. Nguyen?
Yes, thank you. I just want to first echo what Councilmember Anderson just said about we need to do the thing. We need to continue to work with the county to turn that manufactured home strategy into a funded action plan. I think the other piece of this is this situation was a great opportunity for us to leverage our membership in the Government Alliance for Racial Equity and use their toolkit on how to center and uplift the lived experience and voices of marginalized communities in our decision-making process. We must institutionalize that toolkit in our land use planning and policymaking so that BIPOC communities can directly participate in the conversation instead of being spoken for by others. In that vein, I think it's essential for us to continue providing community-based organizations like Empowerment and El Centro Hispano, who did the heavy lifting of organizing and engaging with this community and giving them the necessary resources they need to build channels for Tar Heel Mobile Home Park and other vulnerable neighborhoods to be at the forefront of our community engagement as we move forward, so that they're not only aware of what is going on, but can meaningfully contribute to the conversation. And then, forgive my poor Spanish here. Y para todas las familias de Tar Heel, ustedes son esenciales para nuestra comunidad y son más que bienvenidos. Y me disculpo si se siente que eso no es el caso. Ustedes sí son bienvenidos en Chapel Hill. Yo sé que esto no se termina hoy y que nosotros y la ciudad tenemos que continuar luchando para protegerlos a ustedes y sus familias. Seguiremos trabajando con el condado y nuestros aliados comunitarios como el Centro y Empowerment para abogar por ustedes. Vamos a crear un plan de acción y estaremos consultando a ustedes primero para ver sus necesidades. Por favor, no duden en contactarme si tienen alguna duda o pregunta. Muchas gracias por su tiempo y atención esta noche.
Thank you. Ms. Stegman?
I can't possibly follow that, but I absolutely agree with everything I know that Councilmember Nguyen said, and pretty sure not sure what he said in Spanish. But I just wanted to say before we vote on this, I just want to recognize and say thank you to Mayor Heminger for her hard work to get the improved conditions that we'll be voting on. You know, some of the biggest concerns I personally had about the agreement was the rent agreement and having it be a shorter period of time and a narrow percentage is a huge change for the residents. So I really, really appreciate that. And thank you, Mayor, for leading that effort.
Mr. Parker?
Yeah, I'll just be brief. I think one thing I just want to stress in all of this is, first of all, I want to thank everybody who's made this a better deal. And I want to thank our community organizations who have worked with the residents and helped us understand their needs and concerns. I think the one thing I have learned through this process is really the misconceptions that too many of us have about mobile home park residents. And, you know, if I've learned nothing else from this, it's how important these homes are to these folks. This is a neighborhood. And so for the folks who, you know, have urged us to vote no, I certainly understand why you've taken the position you've taken. But one of the core values we have in Chapel Hill is preservation of our neighborhoods and of our communities. And this mobile home park, as well as all the other mobile home parks in Chapel Hill, our neighborhoods, our communities, and we owe them the same level of protection that we would afford any other community or neighborhood in this town that was under any kind of a threat that would require them to leave their homes. So while this is not a great project to be sure, while I think none of us feel good about the negotiation position that we have been placed in, but at the end of the day, what certainly has compelled me is that this mobile home park, all of our mobile home parks are neighborhoods with strong sense of community, with strong interpersonal connections, and we owe them, you know, the protection that we would give any other neighborhood.
Mr. Boincy?
Yeah, I'll also be brief, but I won't repeat in full what I said a couple of weeks ago when we voted on this the first time. You know, one thing I just want to reemphasize is that during this pandemic, we have seen so many families, so many people lose jobs, lose housing, and we're still in the throes of a pandemic. And certainly at the top of my mind is ensuring that our residents in Chapel Hill have housing stability, housing security. I mean, we've been able to make some gains in terms of ensuring the stability of folks, especially with the rental period, and then with what the mayor updated us on in terms of the 2-year 5% on the rent increases. That's some progress. And I hear the folks out there who are upset that we're in the position that we're in. I'm upset as well. And as Councilmember Queen said, we need to develop an actionable mobile homeless strategy as soon as possible so that we don't put ourselves in this position again. And I also want to say that I know we're going to be getting a presentation later on from the partnerships in homelessness, but they've told us that during this pandemic, they have seen a marked increases in calls on their housing hotline, that they've heard from callers who have lost income due to COVID, due to job loss, layoffs. And again, we have to keep the people on the top of our minds and understand that this decision doesn't line up with the vision that we have for this part of town, but also we have real families, real lives at stake. So want to say that, and then, yeah. So I also want to thank especially El Centro and the NAACP for their work in reaching out to the community and creating opportunities for the community within Tar Heel Mobile to communicate what their concerns are and will be, so that even after this vote, we're keeping a close eye. We are being accountable to the residents at Tar Heel Mobile. Thank you.
Ms. Ryan?
I'm sad that we're in this position of being forced to make an either-or decision that will affect the future of our town and the lives of so many people. There was a path forward that would have preserved the Tar Heel community and allowed the owner to make a profitable use of his property. Unfortunately, the owner chose to force the town to choose a mega self-storage facility in the heart of our residential neighborhoods and on one of our busiest transit corridors, where all our town goals say we need to maximize our housing and commercial capacity. He decided it was okay to use the lives of the Tar Heel residents as a bargaining chip in this commercial transaction. Not only is this repellent, but it has the potential to set a dangerous precedent in negotiations on future development projects. My heart is with the Tar Heel residents threatened with the loss of their community. The resolution before us is both a bad land planning decision and at the same time does not adequately protect this vulnerable community. From where I sit, it's a lose-lose. I'd like to thank council, staff, and the mayor's office for working tirelessly to try to improve this project. A few things have gotten better, but I wish the resolution before us reflected better site planning and real strong tenant protections, but it doesn't. Whatever the final vote is, we need to continue working to create a better solution for this site and the Tar Heel community. And I'd like to strongly echo Jess Anderson's comments that we need to really start making a serious commitment to working with our partners in the county and our other nonprofits to actually have a workable and actionable strategy.
Ms. Gu?
Well, first, I would just start to say that throughout this process, I think that a lot of times I feel extremely frustrated, even feel infuriated, but at the same time, I feel greatly encouraged and see what a great community that we're in. I have talked to the residents at the mobile park, and I've talked to El Centro and many other organizations, and I talked to the neighbors of that area. I just feel that there are actually so many consensus that among us, there is this outpouring of the care for our town and the care for the most vulnerable members of our community. I think that is something that we can build on. So that being said, I just feel that this project is one of those projects that I really think it's a predatory project that by a real estate developer who is trying to engage in this excessive real estate speculation with no care for our community. The way that they carry through this project, the misinformation and the lack of information that has been presented throughout the process, I think that that's not acceptable. A lot of times that the information has been presented is not clear to the people in the public hearings. I think we need to review our entitlement process and the way that we run all those public hearings and advisory boards, and to see how we can make it effective, so that we're not going to let something like this to happen again. I think my biggest concern, after talking to all the different groups that involved in this project, is people are worried that if we agree with this project, who are actually, then are we just like what we did 15 years ago, when we or 10 years ago or 9 years ago, that when we have various documents and the task forces about the mobile home park strategic plan, are we going to just walk away and just kick this can down another 15 years? I think that people are worried that what kind of strategies that we have, how we're going to prevent this from happening again. To other mobile home park residents, and especially after 15 years, how are we going to take care of the residents who then this agreement will expire, then they will not have anything anywhere else to move to. Do we still cherish that they're part of our community? I think that's a big question that we need to answer. Which is the reason that I brought it early on in this hearing, is this restricted mobile home zoning district. I really think it is a regulatory tool. Of course, that we need other fundings and lands, and probably going to commit that as well in order to form this coherent strategy. I think before our town staff sign off on this project, I really think we need to feel some of the holes still exist in this agreement, especially with regard to the safe roads for the community, that to connect the inside of the mobile home to the MLK Boulevard. And there are the concerns of the residents, whether or not their life qualities is going to be significantly impacted.
They're talking 4 minutes. Can you wrap up, please?
Yes. Well, I think that we need a community conservation committee. I think we need to work on that to make sure that the concerns or the mistreatment by this developer or the owner, that will be properly addressed. There will be people that are standing by to help the vulnerable residents. I think we owe it to them to make sure that their living conditions is safe. I think that everyone in town of Chapel Hill deserves that.
Mr. Boyce, did you have something?
Yes, very, very quick. I apologize, Mayor. So I just wanted to also include empowerment, and I apologize for not including them in my comments earlier. Ms. Bailey of Empowerment has been meeting with the residents of Tar Heel Mobile for the past 2 years. She has put in countless hours, and her and the staff at Empowerment, I mean, they have done so much great work in connecting with the residents and ensuring that we as council members are hearing from the residents. So I just wanted to lift up Empowerment in that regard. So I apologize for the double dip there.
I'm going to be brief on my remarks before we vote, and then I want to share some remarks after we vote. But I want to say this has been a very difficult decision. Our town values communities like Tar Heel Mobile Home Park. We value the residents there. We value their families. There's many children in this community that attend our schools. There's many people in this community that work in places in town, and they bring a vibrancy to our community that we cherish. We've made land use plans as we're planning for the future that don't really incorporate these kinds of ideas on transit corridors. And so this has been very hard to balance all of that. How do we make that fit into the fabric of Chapel Hill? And there's been a lot of people concerned and interested in this situation. But at the end of the day, I'm really worried about these particular 73 families and the fact that we don't have places for them to go, other places in our community, and the fact that they are already a community within a community. So I will save the rest of my comments. I appreciate all the things my colleagues have shared. I share most of those sentiments as well, and I will call for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt revised ordinance A.
Second.
The move by Mr. Boyncy, second by Mr. Nguyen. Any comments that have not been shared already? Ms. Gu, what's not been shared?
Can we add a stipulation with regard to Community Conservation Committee?
Only if it's acceptable to the motion makers. Is that acceptable to the motion makers?
What do you think, Ty?
I'm sorry, the stipulation is to create a conservation committee?
A Community Conservation Committee that will be the mediator to protect the interest of the residents and engage in this conversation with the owner when the residents' interests are being infringed. Safety or interests are being infringed.
Ms. Anderson,
I've got to defer to the town attorney to see if we can include that in this conditional zoning.
Reminder that this is a conditional zoning and all stipulations and conditions not otherwise set forth in the LUMO have to be accepted by the applicant. If I recall correctly, Mr. Jewell expressed that that was not a condition that they could accept in this conditional zoning. And so I think it would be a futile effort if that helps with the procedure that you're about to follow.
Is amendment accepted or denied from the motion makers?
Based on that.
Yeah, Mr. Jewell, I mean, can you just give us a final answer on that?
Yes, the attorney's recollection was correct. Yeah, we won't participate in a community conservation committee.
Okay, I appreciate that proposed amendment, Ms. Gu. Unfortunately, since it's not, well, due to the advice of Ms. Anderson, I won't accept that. But Mr. Nguyen, what do you think?
Yeah. Right. We have a motion on the floor then.
Mayor, I just have a quick question. Do we need a resolution of consistency first?
No, we passed that last meeting, and that doesn't, that only needed a simple majority.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that reminder, though. All right. Roll call vote. Mayor Pro Tem Parker.
Aye.
Councilmember Anderson.
Nay.
Councilmember Boyncy.
Aye.
Councilmember Gu.
Nay.
Councilmember Nguyen.
Aye.
Councilmember Ryan.
Aye.
Councilmember Stegman.
Aye.
Mayor also says aye. The motion passes. Before you check out of this item, I do want to share a few comments. First of all, contrary to what many people in the community have heard, local governments in North Carolina have no authority to stay evictions. Only the governor has that right, and no power to force a landlord owner to keep a mobile home park open. Those are some of the conditions we've been working with here. Since we knew that and we wanted to work to help with the rent situation, we worked with the developer to have these additional rent protections put in for the existing folks in this park to help them stay in an affordable situation. And we wanted to make sure these families, and I also want to say thank you to Empowerment and El Centro and all the people that worked to talk and communicate with the families there. And we will continue that. Our staff has also been involved. We will continue that and finding ways forward to help make sure those community members are more engaged and able to lift up their own voices to us. So we are very grateful for all that support. We're going to be hearing about our affordable housing progress tonight. We have passed the affordable housing $10 million bond. We spend about $6 million a year on affordable housing in general. We do have partnerships with the county we need to leverage, and we need to figure out better ways to do more. And we know that we're working very hard to figure those ways out, especially during COVID. It's been interesting. I want to share with you that to the developer. The council and the town, the community and the broader community has an interest in seeing if we can make this project better by rotating the storage unit over to the side of the property. We weren't able to figure a way out to do this ahead of time with our processes and all the things that define how we go about making a change like that on this property. I know the developer was willing to consider this, and so I would like to implore our staff to work with the developer to see if there's any way to make that a reality, which would make this project better as far as land use, as far as visibility from both the residents living there and from the people at the street. And to see if there's an expedited way to make that happen. I know it's an unusual request, but there was great interest in seeing if we could make that a reality. Unfortunately, we couldn't get that all worked out in time for a vote. It was something that will need a little further depth. And I also would like to implore you to work with our own Brian Peterson as far as navigating the site if you're a pedestrian living there, coming to and from bicycles, and talk about those safety and screening issues. So I would love for you to work with him. And I also want to say this situation has caused us to really think about how we described our land use with self-storage in particular. And I would like council support for having our staff bring back recommendations on changes we could make so that you could look at those on how we don't have self-storage units on our transit corridors. So I would like to see that. And finally, I want to say to the Tar Heel Mobile Home folks, we really want you to stay engaged. This is your community. You are part of Chapel Hill. We want to hear your voices. We want you to speak up. We have opportunities on advisory boards. We're here where if you want to speak through El Centro and Empowerment and other groups, that we welcome that too. But we want you to stay engaged. This is not a vote, we're done, everything's over for 15 years. We want to keep you engaged. So I hope you will do that. And then I want to just say thank you to our Spanish interpreters for helping us through this process. You've made it easier for the residents to understand what is going on. And I want to just say we're very grateful for that. And so we can ask you, I don't think we'll need you for the rest of the meeting. So thank you for your service. And Mr. Sudol, you have something to tell us. Sorry, when do you have to tell us?
Mayor, I apologize for interjecting. I believe that we still need a vote on the revocation of special use permits that are existing currently on the site.
Oh, sorry, thank you for the reminder. Can I have a motion for what Mr.
So moved.
Second.
A move by Mr. Parker, second by Mr. Nguyen to release the special use permits, which we didn't do last time, now that we have a conditional zoning approval. Any comments that haven't been shared about that? Okay, roll call vote. Mayor Pro Tem Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Boynton.
Aye.
Ms. Gu.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. Mr. Sudol, does that cover us for?
I believe it does. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We are finished with this item. We will move on to the next item.
Well, I just want to add one last thing, that I want to assure the residents that who express their opinions through the process, that they shouldn't feel scared or there being retribution from the property owner. If that happens, I want to assure them, because we have been coming to them and asking them to express their opinions. We want to assure them that we will stand with you. If that happens, we will all be standing with you to protect your safety and interest.
Thank you. We're moving on to item number 6, which is to consider an application for conditional zoning for Phi Gamma Delta at 108 West Cameron Avenue to rezone from Office Institutional, or OI1, to Office Institutional 3 Conditional Zoning District. This is the second. We've closed the public hearing. Is that correct on this? Sorry. So this is just effort. Okay. So thank you. I know we'd seen it before, but it's been a little while. So, Anya.
No problem. Judy's going to help me out by sharing her screen for us. So good evening, Town Council. Judy, if you don't mind putting it in slideshow mode. Thank you. So good evening, Town Council. I'm Anya Gran with the Planning Department. I have 9 slides, and this should only take about 5 minutes to present the conditional rezoning for Phi Gamma Delta at 108 West Cameron. And as you can see, I'm having tech issues once again, so Judy's going to help us out. So next slide. So the recommendation before you tonight is to adopt Resolution A, the Resolution of Consistency, as well as enact Ordinance A, which would abandon the special use permit or SUP and approve the conditional zoning application. Next slide. So here's where we are in the review process. This project has been through multiple rounds of advisory board review and staff review, and it's now before you, the town council. As a reminder, the town council did review this item back on December 9th. And then at the request of the applicant, council continued this item at the January 13th meeting to tonight. So next slide. So the Phi Gamma Delta fraternity is located on the northwest corner of South Columbia Street and West Cameron Avenue. Because the site is in the Cameron-McPauley Historic District, the Historic District design guidelines are applicable. Back in 2019, the applicant exceeded the floor area that was allowed by their special use permit or SUP by enclosing a back porch. They also removed some existing parking that was in the backyard. And so the applicant has come forward with this conditional rezoning application that would allow them to maintain the porch enclosure that added 1,044 square feet of floor area, as well as the fraternity's removal of that on-site parking. So next slide. So once again, the applicant is requesting to abandon the special use permit from 1997, and that'll be replaced with the conditional zoning district application. So next slide. Here's a site plan view of the existing conditions. The property line is shown in red. There is frontage along Cameron Avenue, and then Columbia Street is just to the east, and Pittsboro Street is directly south. The existing fraternity house, as you can see in this picture here, is the brick house that's about 1 lot in from that intersection. So going to the next one. And there it is highlighted. Okay, here the property boundaries are shown in green, or will be in a minute here. The applicant is proposing to maintain the enclosed porch, which is on the back of the house, and it's shown there in blue. And then access will continue to be off of Cameron Avenue. And so moving to the next slide. The project has been reviewed by the advisory board shown here, and each did forward a positive recommendation to the town council. At the Transportation and Connectivity Advisory Board, or TCAB, there was some concerns that the parking in the shared driveway on the west side of the house and the bollards that the owner had placed to keep the fraternity brothers from parking in the backyard would impede fire access. We have checked with the fire department, and they did not find that these improvements prevented access to the site. The Planning Commission had also forwarded a recommendation with some concerns that the enclosed porch meet fire codes. And we have spoken with inspections and confirmed that the porch is sprinklered and does have a fire alarm. So going to the next slide. Again, the recommendation before you tonight is to adopt Resolution A, the Resolution of Consistency, and enact Ordinance A, which would abandon the SUP and approve the conditional zoning application. And I can answer any questions you might have. And Kevin Hornick, who's representing the applicant, is also here and can answer questions.
Thank you. Are there any clarifying questions from council? Any comments from council? Any motions from council?
Yeah, I moved Resolution A.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Parker, second by Ms. Stegman. Any comments that haven't been shared? All right, roll call vote. Mayor Pro Tem Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Boyncy.
Aye.
Ms. Gu.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
The mayor also says aye.
Okay, I move Ordinance A.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Parker, second by Ms. Stegman. Any comments that haven't been shared? Roll call vote. Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Ms. Anderson.
Aye.
Mr. Boyncy.
Aye.
Ms. Gu.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
The mayor also says aye. Is that all you need?
It was. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your patience and We'll move on to item number 7.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Item number 7, an update from Orange County Partnership to End Homelessness. We have Ms. Corey Root with us.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to give you an update on the work of the Orange County Partnership to End Homelessness. I'm Corey Root, the manager of the Orange County Partnership to End Homelessness. And I'm going to share my screen with the 2020 report. So our report from last year that I believe is also in your packet. Sorry. Okay. Is that working? Great, thank you. So the partnership has been continuing a lot of the work that we've been doing since 2008, when we were sort of formally incorporated through the local agreement with the town of Chapel Hill, town of Carrboro, town of Hillsborough, and Orange County, which all fund the partnership work. So we've been continuing the coordination and collaboration work as our formal designation as the continuum of care. And also continuing our work coordinating grant funding, which I'll talk about in just a little bit, for the entire community. But we've really had a real different year with 2020, not just for the pandemic, but that also influenced it. But also in 2020, the partnership created 4 direct service programs. So really excited to talk with you about those. So this time last year, I was the only employee of the partnership. Now there are 12 employees of the partnership. So it's been exponential growth as we've added these programs. And I'd love to talk with you a little bit more about each one of the programs. So let's see. I'm going to scroll down a little bit so we can see this whole chart. So we've added 4 direct service programs. So this includes the Housing Helpline, which is like the centralized place that we direct folks who are in any sort of housing crisis. This ranges from folks that are needing help with their rent to folks that sort of, have an immediate eviction or other need to find housing quite quickly, to folks that are experiencing homelessness, either just for a short time or even for years and years. So that entire spectrum of folks can get help at the Housing Helpline. When people call in, our staff, which are currently 4 FTEs, we have 2 full-time FTEs and 2 temps at this point. They do an assessment and get folks directed to the exact right resource that someone needs to resolve their housing crisis situation. The Housing Access Coordinator, I'm thinking you might remember from previous years, this is the 3rd year that we have funded the Housing Access Coordinator position through the partnership. This position was located at the Community Empowerment Fund, or CEF, one of the 2 sort of pillar organizations in our system, along with IFC. So, but that position moved into the county and is a partnership position at this point. And so that's working really well to recruit landlords and make units available for different programs in our system, all different programs. Rapid rehousing, I've talked about a lot in the past. This is sort of the bread and butter program of any homeless service system, short-term rental assistance and services. We currently have 2 full-time positions and are thrilled that that's up and running. And then the street outreach, harm reduction and deflection program, we usually call them by their acronym, which is So RAD. They are so rad, but they are also so rad. So this is the group that works with people that are living unsheltered to connect them with services and housing. So on the, let me just scooch this down a little bit. And in this table here, you can really see the other thing that I alluded to earlier, that's sort of been our whole 2020, all of us, which is COVID response, right? So COVID response on the housing helpline has meant just an exponential increase in the number of folks that we're seeing. We don't exactly have apples to apples data because it just so happened that we were making this change from having people go in person to access sites that used to be at the Community Empowerment Fund, CEF, and DSS, Orange County Department of Social Services, to a model where we were doing this at the county in March of 2020. And so that just so happened with, our friend COVID. So we don't exactly have apples to apples numbers, but we have seen that just the numbers as you see there just increase and stay very, very high. So pre-pandemic, we were serving about 60 households a month in our old system, and one day earlier this week, we got 95 calls and 78 emails, I think. So, it's just, the volume is just an incredible increase. I'm happy to say that another thing that's also increasing is the number of folks that are getting housing through our system, which I've talked about before, of our coordinated entry of folks going through the home committee process. So last year was our best year ever since we started using this process in 2012, 87 households housed. We just had our meeting earlier today, and just through March of this year, we've already housed 41 households. So we're continuing to see really great numbers, and we've passed over serving 300 households, well past that at this point. So I'm really, really excited about that. Another piece of good news is we're continuing to see decreases in the number of people experiencing chronic homelessness. We think that is largely because we've focused most of our federal funding on permanent supportive housing, which is the program that serves people experiencing chronic homelessness, as well as because we adopted earlier than a lot of communities this process through the home committee and the by name list review. Looking at the second page of the report, we saw a big increase in the amount of funding through the Emergency Solutions Grant this year. This is because there was a huge allocation, $4 billion, I believe, in the CARES Act for Emergency Solutions Grant. So this year we secured $1.7 million in federal funding, and that's $11.2 million since the partnership started, which was even sort of before the formal incorporation in 2005, $11.2 million. Looking at the number of people experiencing homelessness during last year's point in time count, which is a count where we count the number of people experiencing homelessness on one night. We don't have the 2021 data yet. I should have that in 2 months or so, and we'll be excited to share that at that time. But looking at the 2020 numbers, we counted 124 people experiencing homelessness on one night. Those numbers slightly down from 2019. Looking sort of over a long period back to 2010, relatively flat, a slight decrease of 8%. Not the decreases that they've seen nationwide or statewide of folks that have done more of the gap filling that we're talking about a lot, and really looking towards continuing to see even more progress in these numbers as we do fill our system gaps. Now, looking at more of like a 12-month period, the number of people that were served in our system last year, we served over a 12-month period, 365 people in either shelter or transitional housing programs. So that would be it. Those are all at IFC, 225 at Home Start or in the emergency cold weather cot beds, and then 140 at Community House. Also served 42 people in rapid rehousing, so that's up from 0 in 2019. So we're really thrilled again to sort of get that program going and launched. And then 96 folks in that program that is for folks exiting chronic homelessness, permanent supportive housing. Also really want to continue to point out that, we see really large racial disparities, particularly for people that are Black and African American, and the number of people experiencing homelessness. So in the overall population in Orange County, 12% of folks are Black or African American, and the population experiencing homelessness, 51%. So it's very stark. And we know that this is because of historic, racist policies that were written right into federal housing policy, as well as current discrimination that we see, from, that is illegal, but we do see, in different housing situations. So this is why we continue to talk extensively in the partnership about racial equity, and know that we have to incorporate racial equity into the work to end homelessness in order to end homelessness. And so we're continuing to do a lot of work on that at the partnership leadership team and throughout the work of the partnership. So really appreciate the support of the town of Chapel Hill in myriad ways, including obviously the financial support that the town gives to the partnership each year, as well as town staff are just incredible collaborators and partners, and really advance the work substantially. Through the Emergency Housing Assistance Project, which is my colleagues at the Orange County Housing Department run and or administer in conjunction in partnership with the town, but also just day to day on all of the work to the partnership. It's really amazing. So thank you so much for this opportunity to tell you about our work.
Is the mayor frozen?
Oh, sorry, trying to find the screen's different here. Thank you very much. If you can bring us back to the full screen, we can see if there's questions.
Yes.
Thank you, Corey, for that update. I'd love the model of the partnership, and love hearing about your great work. I think it's so important how you have that intersectionality and cut across the silos that I think we face so often in the work we're doing. So I really appreciate that. I'd really like to hear more about the new street outreach program. I think it's so timely, and I think that it's a step towards that alternative to 911 type of conversation we're having in the community. So I think it'd be great to hear more about what the program has accomplished so far, what the goals are, just kind of more about how it's going, I guess.
Yes, thrilled to talk about that. So this program has 3 full-time staff, 2 peer support navigators, and a clinical coordinator. And just these folks were hired in October 2020, so still relatively new, but even in that short amount of time, they've really hit the ground running and done lots of great things. So we've pulled together some numbers, and they sort of started program work in November-ish. So November to present, they've served over 120 people. Of those, and this just shocked me in the best way possible, they have housed directly from the streets, like without a bypass into shelter or any other program, 20 people so far, which is just really beyond my wildest dreams. Really thrilled with that work. They've also assisted folks, 20 different folks with entering shelter. So we're really happy to have folks inside if they're wanting to go inside and help with it for that collaboration there. They've obtained either supplies or help folks get supplies, food, transportation for over 80 people, And the new thing is that this is really the group that is helping with getting vaccines, the COVID vaccine for folks that are unsheltered. So they've done 2 different ride-arounds with our partners from the health department administering vaccines. And so far we've gotten 16 folks that are unsheltered the COVID vaccine. So, and they'll continue that work and also with the second doses and things like that. So there are a number of different vaccine things that they'll be working on. We also, with the clinical coordinator, can provide direct mental health services, and she's done that for about 25 folks, which is, it just, you know, we know it doesn't always work for our folks to make an appointment, you know, 2 Thursdays from now at Freedom House. We're really happy to be able to do that and love our partnership with Freedom House, but some folks just can't sort of make that work. So being able to go to people, meet them where they are to offer those, you know, clinical mental health services has been really key. And then, you know, the law enforcement deflections, as you mentioned, council member, is a really key part of the program. And that's happened more than 20 times so far, where we've been able, with the great partnership from Chapel Hill Police Department, the police officers have called the SORAD team, who've been able to come quickly and been able to divert a potential arrest. So that's been really great. That's
fabulous. Really great news. Thank you so much for sharing those results. And I understand that the program, I believe, is grant funded right now. What's the future of that funding? How long does that last?
Yes, so this was part of the funding through the CARES Act Emergency Solutions Grant. So we were awarded 12 months of funding, and that started October 2020. So that current grant funding ends September of 2021. And so we are looking now to try to find ongoing annual funding for the program.
I assume you'll be asking us for funding, I hope.
I think, yeah, my colleague, Caitlin Hagen is working on that and making those rounds. Yeah, I think we would love to have, you know, an ongoing annual funding to be able to support this program.
It sounds like very important to support. So thank you very much for sharing that detail.
Are there any other questions for you in the public? Mr. Nguyen?
Yeah, well, first, thank you so much for the presentation. I had a quick question. I know Kate came to our Reimagining Public Safety Task Force and did a presentation. And I think she covered the harm reduction work. But I think our task force members have been asking recently for kind of deeper learning opportunities about what's being done and what can be done around reimagining public safety. So the question is, would it be possible for the staff associated with the program to come to one of our task force meetings and do a presentation and have, you know, a deeper discussion about that?
Absolutely. Yes. To do that.
And I don't know if Maurice is.
Sorry, we have a member of the public wishing to speak on this item. If you're wanting to speak, please raise your hand and Mr. Parker will help pull you in.
Don't see anybody.
We had a raised hand.
I do? Where? Oh, let me see.
Sorry, I saw it flash up and I don't know where it went.
I'm not seeing it now. Oh, wait, there it is. Hangbin raised her hand.
Okay,
sorry. I'm trying to figure out who's raising hands, so.
Okay,
no,
you want to?
It was you.
Put your hand down. All right, anyone from the public wishing to comment? All right, back to council comments. Mr. Parker?
Yeah, I just want to thank Corey and her entire team for doing such terrific and important work under such exceptionally difficult circumstances. You know, what could have, you know, I know what the SORAD team did, for example, working with the folks who had been, you know, camping out on the Wallace deck. So I just want to thank you enormously. It's been I can't imagine how difficult a year it's been for all of you folks. And so just thank you for hanging in there and building your program and helping so many people who needed it.
Second that, Mr. Boyncy.
Yeah, I also want to echo our gratitude and thanks to you, Corey, and to the partnership. I mean, these are especially hard times, and it always helps to have good people who are there for our most vulnerable. So I just thank you for the work, and you know, I think as Ms. Stegman hinted at earlier, you know, we're eager to do what we can to help out.
Agreed. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening and sharing this information, but mostly thank you for all that you are doing. I know it's a partnership that's working, and we appreciate being part of this partnership and contributing to it in many different ways. But you're doing impressive work, so we really thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. All right, we'll move on to item number 8, receive the second quarter fiscal 2021 affordable housing report.
Thanks, Nate. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Lauren Clark, your Executive Director for Housing and Community. And tonight our team is here to present our fiscal year 21 second quarter report on affordable housing. Tonight's presentation will include the standard review of our affordable housing initiatives by Sarah Venus and Nate Broman-Folks. And then for the first time, we're premiering our public housing quarterly report. And Faith Brody and Stacy Todd will be here to present that to you. And this presentation will also highlight some next steps to give you a sense of what's on the horizon with our affordable housing work. And our presentation will take about 15 minutes to review. And with that, I will turn things over to Sarah.
Thanks, Lauren. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As a reminder, our affordable housing report shares our quarterly progress towards Council's affordable housing goals on a quarterly basis. And this is our report, as Lauren mentioned, for the first 2 quarters of this fiscal year. Looking at community indicator data that's shown here, we see that over the last several years, we are seeing a rise in housing costs, which has led to an increase in difficulty paying for housing among many Chapel Hill residents. Over the last several years, as a result, the town has started to increase its investment in affordable housing and established an investment plan to get more units on the ground. As a reminder, Council established the development reserve, and a $10 million affordable housing bond was approved. And over the last 5 years, the Council has awarded a total of $11.1 million to support affordable housing projects in the community. And with this increased investment, we continue to see more projects being completed. As we continue to work towards Council's 5-year target for affordable housing development and preservation, at the start of each year, we develop a projection for how many units that we anticipate to be completed. And for this year, we anticipated that 15 development units would be completed and 400 preservation units completed by the end of the year. And you'll note that we have a much higher preservation projection compared to other years. And this is due in large part to the increase in emergency housing assistance, which you heard about already some in Corey's presentation. And we are on pace to achieve Council's 5-year target for affordable housing. In fact, we've now already far exceeded Council's target for preservation by 300%, and are about halfway to reaching the established target for development units by 2023. Now to briefly highlight some of our results from the first half of the year. We saw 2 development projects come online, and we've supported the preservation of over 560 units of affordable housing in the community. Almost all of the funded projects are on track to be completed on time and within budget. And 84% of funding available for projects has been allocated to projects. We've dedicated over $1.29 million to emergency housing assistance to support Chapel Hill families in housing crisis.
And now I'll turn it over to Nate to share with you more details about our emergency housing assistance program and other project highlights.
Thanks, Sarah, and good evening, Mayor and Council. As we heard in Corey's presentation, and as Sarah mentioned, the amount of funding that's been allocated towards emergency housing assistance, we have seen an incredible growth in the need for assistance with payments to help our residents stay in their homes. And so these graphs show you, since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, the number of emergency housing assistance payments that have been made, as well as the amount of assistance dollar-wise that has been provided. And so you can certainly see a huge increase from what we typically see over the last 3 quarters. We are hopeful with vaccination rollout and the economy beginning to open up that this increased need will begin to subside. We do anticipate there being a significant need for the foreseeable future, though. Here you can see one of the 2 new affordable homes that have been incorporated into the permanently affordable inventory this year. This is a community home trust home in the Northside neighborhood that came about through a partnership with Self-Help in the Northside Neighborhood Initiative Land Bank. And this home is now permanently affordable. Staying on the addition of new units subject, we have been making good progress on the development projects on town-owned land. Starting with 2200 Homestead Road, that's our project that's furthest along in the development process. We submitted a rezoning application for that project in the fall and have been going through the internal review process, and are looking forward to kicking off the advisory board review of that project beginning next week. And this project will come to you for a public hearing towards the end of April, and then anticipated decision in May for approval or denial of the project. And the second project is J Street. We have selected a potential development partner for this site and executed a memorandum of understanding with them. That group is a partnership between the Taft Mills Group and the Community Home Trust. And we are just kicking off the concept planning process, and we'll be initiating community engagement here in the coming weeks, and plan to have a concept plan for you to review before the summer. The third site that we've been making progress on is Bennett Road. We've been putting together a visioning process to give you for your review, and plan to have that to you in the next month or so to outline what a visioning process, a concept planning process could look like for developing affordable housing on the Bennett Road site. We're also excited about the progress that's being made on the Trinity Court redevelopment project, but I'll let Faith and Stacy tell you more about that project. Sticking with development, Sarah mentioned earlier in the presentation the increased investment the town has made. And as we probably all know, the development process, it takes a while from identifying a parcel of land to when construction can be completed and units are available. But what we do see here, I think, is the culmination of the efforts that have been made the previous years to really develop a healthy pipeline of affordable housing. And so this slide shows you the number of different development projects that are either underway or planned to be soon. And shows you we anticipate about 500 new affordable homes coming online over the next 5, 6, 7 years. Also looking ahead to the remainder of this year, and where we're planning on focusing a lot of our time and continuing to provide emergency housing assistance is top of that list. We're also going to be bringing to you a community development block grant and home annual plan for use of CDBG and home funds for next fiscal year. We will continue focusing on implementing the manufactured home strategy and including building out a draft relocation plan that we've put together, exploring the use of outside consultants and opportunities to work with our local nonprofit and government partners on implementing aspects of that plan and our general strategy. We're also looking forward to increasing our housing inventory for our transitional housing program and creating opportunities for new employee housing through a master leasing arrangement with the Union Chapel Hill development. And I will turn it over to Faith to introduce the Public Housing Quarterly Report.
Thank you, Nate. I appreciate it. Good evening. I am Faith Brody, your Public Housing Director. During the May 20th meeting of 2020, I provided an update of our progress with reimagining Trinity Court. I also shared at that meeting that consistent with our recovery agreement with the Housing and Urban Development, HUD, Department, Public Housing will begin providing quarterly reports about our progress and efforts to improve our public housing assessment score, also known as FAST. Tonight is our first quarterly report covering the period of October to December 2020. Manager Jones shared information with you on February 26th that we had identified a development partner for Trinity consistent with the goals you identified at previous meetings. We believe this partner understands our vision for the project and has a proven track record of developing successful, affordable housing projects. We are drafting the proposed memorandum of understanding, which will outline the town's agreement, responsibilities, and expectations with the development partner. We plan to return to this body within 45 days with a more specific timeline for the community engagement process and development schedule. But tonight, we will share information about our continuing efforts to improve our FAST score. We've also added information about recent developments in our community engagement during this COVID-19 period and changes that we will maintain moving forward. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to Ms. Stacy Todd, our management analyst. Stacy joined our team in November of 2019 and has increased our capacity to track data, review trends, and better forecast our preservation efforts. I'll now turn it over to Ms. Stacy Todd.
Thank you, Faith. Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Stacy Todd. I am the Management Analyst for Public Housing. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you this evening. We are providing these icons to show the FAST metrics, so the data is a little easier to track as we move through this presentation. Consistent with the many changes COVID-19 has brought about, we in Public Housing have made several adjustments to our normal operations to better ensure the safety of our staff and our residents. We have some examples here, including relocating the weekly food distribution to a central location, distributing masks to all public housing residents, and implementing a pre-screening process for staff, residents, and applicants to ensure the safety of all. The first of our FAST metrics is physical conditions of properties, which is how HUD evaluates our physical sites, building exterior and interiors, and the general condition of our neighborhoods. These are some of the projects underway or completed this last quarter to positively impact our properties. The first image there is a picture of our new roofs. We installed new roofs on all buildings in the Lindsay Street and Craig Gomains properties, which totals 19 new roofs. And the second image you see shows the repairs underway at Oakwood, where 2 units were damaged by a fire. We were able to inspect close to 50% of units in November and December. And the reason that we did not reach 100% is because we implemented our pre-screening process for our mechanics and vendors to complete before entering the residents' households. We have a large population of residents who have limited English proficiency. So while we have been successful in providing translation services through the Refugee Center and also Chick-fil-A, we're currently exploring a language line option that will allow us to better pre-screen our residents by providing on-demand immediate translation services over the phone. Our next metric is financial operations, which is how HUD evaluates whether we have sufficient financial resources and if we are managing those resources effectively. One thing we would like to draw your attention to here is that we have successfully decreased our amount of money due to vendors, which means we are paying our monthly bills in a more timely fashion. Another fast metric is management operations, which HUD evaluates by assessing our occupancy rate, our tenant accounts receivable, and our accounts payable. One thing we would like to highlight in terms of this metric is that we are working hard to increase our occupancy by getting our units ready for leasing as soon as possible. We currently have 8 vacant units, 4 of which are currently in the leasing process of getting leased right now. Our final fast metric is capital grant funds, which HUD evaluates by assessing the time it takes to use funds designated to building improvements. In an effort to assist our preservation efforts, in the last 4 years, we've seen an increase in our capital funds from HUD. Unfortunately, in 2020, we were unable to complete any housing preservation work due to COVID-19. However, we are planning several preservation efforts for 2021, including appliance upgrades. A metric that is of particular interest to us is to measure how we further engage our communities. These are just some of the ways that we've been able to do that. Our resident council held its kickoff meeting in January, and we saw an increase in attendance in February due to our outreach efforts, with 2 residents attending in January and then 4 in February. Of course, we are continuing our efforts to engage more residents, and our goal is to have a resident representative from each neighborhood at the resident council. And our next slide will show our 7 main goals or priorities to positively impact our FAST score and community engagement indicator for this current and future quarters. A few examples are to continue providing food through the weekly food distribution, to continue building our resident council, and to assist council members with completing the Lead the Way training through HUD. We will provide some additional, some next steps on how we can help facilitate that effort. Thank you so much, and we are available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. We can post back to full screen. Great. Thank you. Council members, questions? Mr. Parker.
Just a very quick one. I wanted to go back to the housing preservation and the preservation of affordable housing. Do our affordable housing preservation programs actually address needs in mobile home parks? Are they included in this? Where do they fit in, since mobile home parks are one of our major sources of naturally occurring affordable housing?
Yeah, so the manufactured home strategy would fall underneath our preservation efforts, as there are preservation components of that strategy. We talked about a few of those at the January work session. There are obviously challenges with the manufactured home communities and the strategies to preserve them. But we've also been working with the Orange County Home Preservation Coalition to incorporate manufactured home communities, and in particular, the manufactured homes within them, to better connect them with the repair, rehab work that's being conducted by those partners.
Yeah, I think it's important that we do that. Clearly, we, just as with many other parts of our town, some of our manufactured homes are not in great shape, and anything we can do to help those folks on a fairly current basis, I think would really be a big benefit.
Yeah, and the coordinators of the Orange County Preservation Coalition have now actually joined the Orange County Housing Coalition's Manufactured Home Committee. So we've kind of connected the dots in several places to make sure all the work is being coordinated together.
Thank you.
Ms. Ryan, then Ms. Gu, then Mr. Boynton.
Yeah, sorry if this is a little bit of a basic question, but when you talk about units preserved, are you talking about physically preserved or preserved at an affordable price? Or can you just give me the definition that y'all use?
I think it's both. So maintaining existing affordable housing stock. So we include in that both home repair projects, as well as emergency housing assistance. So maintaining a household within the community that lived in affordable housing. So does that help?
It does. I think it would help when we, just to clarify that a little bit when we get reports, because again, it's a little confusing. And so it's not, it sounds like if you talk about, say, 400 units of affordable housing preserved, you've kept 400 families in affordable situations. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the housing itself, we could be subsidizing that housing. The housing could be market rate, or it could be more expensive. So I think just to maybe more clearly understand where we are with how many units we have that are really affordable and how many we need to subsidize to keep families in an affordable situation. I think it would be useful for us to understand that.
Thank you. We can do that. We actually used to have the definition included up front in our presentation. Took it out. We can add that back in. Thank you.
Sorry, basic is good for us.
Yeah.
Ms. Gu, then Mr. Boynton.
Yeah, well, I think it's exciting that seeing the figure that in the next 5 or 6 years that we have 500 or 600 units that are coming up. So how many of them will actually can be used to house the people in below 30% AMI, like the people in manufactured housing community? Because the numbers that you, or like 2 units that you give that we developed this year, if I read it correctly, you said it's 115% AMI. That actually is market, I would think it's market rate. I don't know what is our strategy for the people who actually desperately need the affordable housing support, who are the people that are below 30% AMI, or the manufactured housing communities that we just reviewed.
Yep, and so Sarah had included our projections for the year. And you're right, the home that we highlighted was a home that was going sold to a family above 80% AMI. Of the 15 homes that we're projecting to be completed this year, at least 5 of them, I believe it would be dedicated for 30% AMI and below, and then 3 more for within 30 to 60% AMI. And for the pipeline that we're looking at over the next 5-6 years, many of them will be tax credit projects, and there is a certain percentage of all tax credit projects that have to serve that 30% AMI, and almost all of them have to at least serve the 60% AMI and below. And there's a variety of projects. There's the public housing redevelopment that's included in there, and the Weaver's Grove, the Habitat project, that Habitat's model is designed to serve the 30 to 60% AMI. So it's a mix with all affordable housing projects, but there will be a certain portion of most of those projects that will be serving the 30% AMI and below. And we could get you the more firmer figures for each of those. If you would like, we could look into that.
Yeah, well, I think that would be very helpful. Well, I think in particular, I would like to know that how many of those residents that in our current mobile home community that will be qualified or will be able to move into our affordable, new affordable housing offering. Because as we know that there are about 200 mobile home park residents. I just feel like at any moment that when their next project that's coming up, we're just facing another crisis. I don't know that what the tools or the options or that currently exist to prevent that from happening again, or is that possible at all? I'm not clear at this point, because I remember that we were in this position 3 years ago when the Lakeview community came up. Seems like 3 years later, we're still feel like there's no tool, no option whatsoever that we have can help those mobile home residents. So what we can do when something like this happen again next time. And of course, we know this Tar Heel Mobile Home Park, the covenants, even if it's like fully executed, it's only 15 years. It's only by us 15 years of time. So after that, what are we going to do?
Yeah, we can look at the specific projects in the pipeline and find a figure to give you of how many might be able to fit with the income levels of the existing manufactured home community residents. If that would
you can
help answer the
imagine,
question.
you can come up with any kind of like dashboard or anything that, so we know here is a goal. There are 200 mobile home residents, or is there any way that we can address their housing needs? I don't know. Should we like have a pool of funds for something that like this happen again next time? We can use that pool of funding. Or I think I'm just waiting for our staff to come up with something or lay out a landscape of options and say, these are the things that we may tap into, or these are the structure that we can build so that we can protect those residents next time something like this happen again.
The staff has proposed to come back with a plan sometime this spring, so we will see that. Nate, there's a question in the question answer about what is AMI that you keep quoting, and I know that it's area median income, but what is actually the number? I know it's a range too, so if you want to share with folks.
Sure, yes, and thank you. Sorry about that. AMI is area median income, and for Chapel Hill, the area median income is about $90,000, and it also varies depending on the family size. So for a family of 4, most of our programs serve the 80% area median income and below. So for a family of 4, that would be about a little less than $73,000 would be the 80% AMI level.
Thank you. Mr. Boyncey?
Sorry. So 2 questions, and this is about the Residents Council. I know that I asked about this a lot, so bear with me. So with the Residents Council, I know that there have been 2 meetings so far this year. And from the responses that we got, I think there were 2 at the first one and then 4 at the second one. I'm just curious, have any of the residents said anything about obstacles or challenges that may face other residents in terms of, preventing even more folks from coming out to the meetings? Has anyone spoken to that?
I think that's a great question. And at our I think technology is a hurdle, absolutely, because I think this past year, a lot of us sort of feel like we're pros now at Zoom and virtual meetings, and I'll feel like I have it all figured out, and then I'll have some snafu. So I think that we have many residents who have the capability to attend virtual meetings, but we're sort of working out some kinks. We used Zoom for our last meeting, and that went pretty well. We have one resident who is elderly and is struggling a bit with technology, and we're working with her. But what we may do moving forward, it seems that she's more comfortable to come to the office. And so what I'm thinking is that maybe she'll continue to come to the office and we'll social distance in the conference room while everyone else signs in virtually, because I don't want her to feel excluded because she's not comfortable with technology. She's the only resident that has really expressed sort of some discomfort with it. I think it's more about working out the kinks with everyone else, just making sure that we know when we're muted and unmuted and sharing screens. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you. And my other question is, I guess between those 2 meetings, have you gotten residents who have committed to being a part of the council, or are folks just interested at this point?
Well, the 2 residents who attended in January also attended in February, as well as an additional 2. So it wasn't 4 new residents, it was those 2 and additional 2. And they've all expressed interest in attending the March meeting, and they are working to engage their neighbors to attend. We actually just heard from one of the residents that came in February that she asked for, we had created flyers inviting residents, and she said she passed them all out and she wanted to get some more because she's having great conversations, and she has a lot of enthusiasm about maybe even having a junior resident council. So I'm feeling a lot of energy in the group, even though it's small. Like, we were kind of laughing saying, oh, we had 100% increase from February, like since January, but I feel there's a lot of energy, and we have learned just in our 2 meetings that we don't need to pack our agenda, because there's the 2 who attended in January and February, and then the additional 2 in February have a lot to say. So I think that in our first couple meetings, we're going to have that space for discussion and for them to tell us what their hopes and goals are. And as we work together, it may be a little more structured, but.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other clarifying questions from council? Any members of the public wishing to speak on this item?
Not that I'm seeing.
Okay. Again, and the report will be available on our town website for those who want to see it later and study it. It's there, and I usually keep a printed copy in my office. I love the dashboard, so thank you for doing that. All right, any other final comments from council members? Well, we do appreciate the good work, and we do appreciate trying to maximize the numbers of units and families that we can help. We know that we have different projects going on. I thought it was really fascinating when you showed the screen of the visioning and all the steps that it takes, because that's helpful for people to understand where we are on the different projects, but also how long it takes to get some of these done. And we'll expect to see that updated as we go on. So thank you very much for all you're doing. And Faith, are you still out there working those food distributions on Wednesdays?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, thank you for that too. It's been amazing. Love that we have a lot of staff out there helping and volunteers. So it's been wonderful too. So thank you. All right, we'll move on to our next item. Moving on to item number 9. Consider the number of lanes and parking technology as related to the East Rosemary parking deck. I believe Dwight stayed up to be with us this evening.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. We're here tonight to talk about the East Rosemary parking deck and some options that we'd like to present to you. I am Dwight Bassett, Economic Development Officer, and I have Jeffrey Pozluzny with me that will also be presenting. We have about 40 slides, and we believe it'll take about 15 minutes to present the information to you. Just a quick reminder of what we're talking about. Current picture that came from our architect, and you can see it even calls out the Varsity Alley sign for our new green space. So our recommendation is that council adopt the 2 resolutions to determine the number of lanes at the eastern East Rosemary entrance and to determine the parking technology for the deck. Just a quick reminder of some project status items. North Street is under option and set to close in early May. Design team for North Street has been assembled and beginning work. Title issues are being worked out. Plans submitted to DOI, Department of Insurance, for review to move for building permit. Tree and roadway design issues were presented at Council Committee on Economic Sustainability. To proceed, the decision about lanes and parking technology are critical so that we can finalize our plans and make necessary changes to proceed and move toward construction. Seemed like to me, as I was listening to other presentations tonight, that it would just be helpful to give you a reminder of why we're here in March and why this issue is coming up now, because it will cause us to have to redesign some of the plans. And just to remind council, we came to you in December and brought you some technology options. And with those options was the park system, which includes the gates and the tag readers and the payment systems, and potentially the APGS systems showing wayfinding, and as well as open parking spaces. After that council meeting, we went back and began looking at it, and Walker began preparing bids to send out to see what that would cost us. We had projected that if we went with the existing systems we're using now, on the low end of cost, it would be $250. And this system, this combination system, could be as much as 1.3. And so we began exploring that, sent those bids out. As we began laying out the parking deck and how we would accommodate this technology, we quickly realized that we had an issue with the gates needing to be located on top of the OWASA easement. And so we initiated conversation with OWASA, and I'm thankful that Manager Jones was able to help us resolve that issue on February 12th and reach an agreement that allows these gates to be placed in our roadway so that we can proceed. And once we had that decision, we immediately began looking for a time to bring these issues to council for consideration. So there's a reason why we're here in March and we're having this conversation. So first, I want to talk to you about vehicle entrance and exit lanes and configuration selection. The lane recommendation comes from our oversight consultant, Walker, and came after that parking technology conversation as we began laying it out, thinking about how to make the deck work efficiently and how we can make it operate best during peak periods of use. We would be removing the Western East Rosemary entrance and making it bike and pedestrian only. The North Street entrance would also be 3 lanes with 1 being reversible. We believe that this would help improve conditions on East Rosemary for traffic coming from both directions and provides more stacking as you enter the deck and removes cars from the street. So this is an existing layout of what we were looking at in our last rendition of the design. If you look at this slide, this is when we were thinking that the entrance to the deck would be in that existing alleyway behind those Columbia Street buildings. And we know that we ended up moving it back to allow some stacking on North Street. Here's a close-up view of that entrance. This is the Western East Rosemary entrance that we've talked about. And we know from the TIA, it was recommended that we not allow that entrance to be operated during peak periods because of conflicts. You know, it would, anyone that tried to turn left and would have a conflict with people stacking at the red light also wanting to turn left. And so it would essentially be a right out primarily most of the time anyway. And here is the existing primary entrance on the east end of that property with 2 lanes sitting on top of the OWASA easement. And this was with no equipment. And here we have our evolution. This is now at 108 North Street, the North Street entrance here. And this is that design. And one of the questions that came out from council after this agenda item is why these parking places are here. And in consideration for how we redesign North Street, we felt it might be nice if we could offer some parking for some of the residents on North Street who currently park on the street to be able to park here since we're going to probably need to open that street up for 2-way traffic all the time. And then you can see the gates at that North Street entrance. And so we always thought there would be a reversible lane, 3 lanes at the North Street entrance. This is the Rosemary Street entrance, and it's one entrance and 1 exit with the gate technology here. That includes the gates, the tag readers, and the ticketing system. And again, this is just a enlarged slide showing that North Street entrance that I was talking about with those parking spaces. And we're also having conversation about whether we actually can do this turnaround back across through this alleyway. So that's not, this is a preliminary concept only, but we think the basis for the design is there, but we are still working on finalizing that. So this is with the parks equipment and 3 lanes at the Eastern East Rosemary entrance. The first is for entering, and then the second is for exiting. And you can see there's 6 cars stacked here. And if you just have 1 lane, you can see here you only get 3, so it doubles the stacking. And that gate technology has a pretty fast processing speed, and that was also shared with you that Mr. Pozzalusny shared with me, how fast cars can move through those gates to prevent there from being a continual stacking. And here is the overall design and how it fits on the Owasso easement to allow this accommodation. It would require us to make the building 12 foot shorter to accommodate that third lane. So it would require a redesign of the building. And we had a construction management team meeting this morning and talked through the time frame in order to make this happen if council decides they would like to go forward with this. This is just showing the top layer of the deck. Right now, you can see there is no top layer on this back area. And if we go with the 3 lanes, we would need to build that out so that we maintain the same number of parking spaces. It also makes it a little bit more functional in that it's a complete circulation pattern for the top floor. And just some of the key points behind why we think this is a good idea. First off, one of the things that we looked at when we were in early consideration back in January is what it would mean if we picked this park technology and went forward and had to move it inside the deck. And our consulting engineer from Walker, Russ Randall, said it would probably be at least 20 parking places that we would lose. And so we did not feel that that was the ideal solution to go forward, that it really does need to be on the outside of the building. This new 3-lane system would allow peak entry times to be improved, peak exit times to be improved. The reversible lane also can be switched for those peak periods if they're not normal peak periods. So if there were significant events where we needed to have more cars going in late morning or early afternoon, we can change that. And also that reversible lane on each entrance also gives us the option that if we ever had technology problems or Owasso needed to access the easement or do any service work, that we could close down one lane and the deck would still fully function versus if they had to do any work on that easement, it would potentially hinder the Rosemary Street entrance. We think it also improves the visibility. It removes the dead-end parking on the top level. It does require some changes to the plans, and we have been talking to our design staff about that for several months. And there is additional equipment costs that I shared with you in the council questions. And we also have to raise the first level floor to accommodate the changes in the deck. So this is just an aerial view showing you that back level that is not completed. And if we went forward with this, we would build out this back level. So it would be a complete circulation pattern around that top level. So I'm going to stop now before we go into parking technology, and I'll be glad to answer any questions if that's helpful, or we can wait to the end, whatever council's interest is.
Why don't we take a few questions now? Dwight, can you put us back to full screen? Sorry. Michael, Mr. Parker, sorry.
Michael is just fine. Anyway, Dwight, in terms of the lost and gained parking spaces, number one, so 2 questions. Number one, you talk about needing to replace the parking spaces that we lose by the 12 feet to get the third lane, by moving that to the roof, basically. So how many, if we don't do that, let's say we lose the 12 feet, but don't add the spaces on the roof, how many spaces do we wind up with in the deck?
I don't know the answer right off the top of my head, but I'm going to make a guess that it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 40. I don't know why that sticks in my head, but I think that that's roughly the number we're talking about, 40 or 50 spaces if we didn't build out the top level.
Yeah, I guess I would just, I don't know if you can answer it now, but how crucial those 40 spaces are, because if my recollection is that the total capacity of the deck before was over 1,100. So even if we lose the 40, it might not be it might not substantially impair the the financial viability of the deck, and we would we would save some construction money. So which leads me to my second question, is when we add everything together, we're moving the building by 12 feet, we're adding a lane, you mentioned we have to raise some stuff on the first floor potentially. So what is the complete and total financial impact of all of those changes, you know, the roof, the changing the building, different how much are we potentially impacting the budget by, and is it in a positive or a negative direction?
So that's a good question, and I only have an answer from Samet based on what they see is shortening the building and adding that top floor. They think the maximum add that it would cost would be $250,000 to do this. And this morning in our construction management team, we talked about whether there was any benefit by closing off that western entrance. And there is some potential savings, but I don't think it's substantial. So we probably are looking at a net increase if we both shorten the building and finish off the top floor. The one thing I can say to you is Grubb is starting to gain interest in the 137 and 136 building, and the first tenant is already asking for a commitment for lease spaces beginning next year. And looking at our parking system and talking to parking right now, I have a bit of a concern that of whether we should cut the spaces or not, because that first tenant's looking for a commitment for 55 lease spaces, and we don't have as many lease spaces on the east end of downtown as we do the west end, and that means we have to make up for those until the deck is complete. It's not a problem once the deck is complete, but that's, you know, a good number of spaces before the deck's completed that we're already committing to leased parking.
And okay, and the last question regarding what we do on the roof, does that enhance or impair our ability to put solar panels up there?
It actually enhances it because the solar bid we've got was going to require some bracing to go across that back span if we were going to put solar back there. And if we had a solid floor up there, it would make it easier because we wouldn't have to have that extra bracing to support the panels if we go forward with that.
Okay, thank you, Dwight.
Okay. Are you ready to keep rolling the next part? Oh, Amy, sorry, Ms. Ryan, did you have something?
I just have some quick questions. Dwight, on the North Street entrance where you're thinking about putting parking in there, have you heard from the residents on North Street that that's something that they're interested in, or are you being proactive, or?
So I think it's a proactive because we have not contracted for that North Street redesign. We met the week of the 12th, I believe it was, with the team, went through it with Brian Peterson and Kumar, and told the engineering firm what we were looking for, and they needed a traffic consultant on their team for the intersection redesign. So we've been negotiating those terms. So it was strictly proactive. We're not into that final design of either the entrance or the North Street or the intersection.
Okay, because I just to bookmark, I've got some serious concerns about the way that's configured and people pulling in and out into the flow of traffic out of the deck, and the way you're losing a lane when people are trying to go in. So just I'll be interested to see how it evolves, but it's looking problematic to me right now.
Right. All right, I'll turn it over to Jeffrey if council has no other questions.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Pozlusti. I'm with Walker Consultants. Dwight, can you confirm that you're seeing the PowerPoint?
I am, but not the right way. It's not in full screen mode.
It's showing your notes off to the side, so you may have to go to your view and change your note section.
Shit.
Try going to the display settings on the top, in the middle.
Jeffrey, are you in a PDF?
No, it's PowerPoint.
Okay, it should be under view mode. There you go.
Much better. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all. I apologize for that delay. Trying to keep with Dwight's 15 minutes, I will try to expedite my discussion this evening. Again, my name is Jeff Kozlowski. I'm with Walker Consultants, technology and operations expert for parking equipment. Thank you for letting me present on the parks and APGS technologies. And before I go too far on acronyms, parks is parking access and revenue control systems, and APGS is automated parking guidance systems. And that's also presented as wayfinding tonight. The project goals for this parking deck, of course, we wanted to not only involve the near future, but many years to come for the East Rosemary deck. The town of Chapel Hill wants to ensure that these technologies will work first and foremost, and to not create problems or issues for the public. Shown as a brief description of the considerations for these technologies, and with the overall goal of providing a system that supports livability and promotes economic development. These systems may in fact be the springboard for more advances in downtown parking technology and systems. A quick review of our project timeline. We started in October with a report for the available technologies that was provided to the town. And after a review of these technologies, we narrowed it down and created a recommendations report. That recommendations report also contained an estimated opinion of cost. In December, the technologies were presented to the Council Committee on Economic Sustainability, and certain technologies were discussed and recommended at that meeting. During the month of December, the RFP process began. We started with some proposal instructions, specifications, and price bid forms. The bid process occurred during the month of January. And at the end of January, we received 6 bids for the parking system and 3 for the automated parking guidance system. A little bit about technology. As described in the timeline earlier, the parks and APGS technologies were described to the town in October. And after review of these options, the recommended solutions were presented in November in another report. And that also contained the estimated opinion of cost. This slide was presented to the the Council Committee in December. These were all the technologies that were in the report. And then the items that are highlighted in red here were the selected technologies. So we'll just focus on those tonight. For the APGS technologies, it wasn't so much about all the options for it, but which level of service we were going to provide. And so it was determined that the best solution would be single space guidance and with camera-based license plate recognition, which would allow a find my car vehicle service. Quick description of the parks. For monthly contract holders, this would be town staff, employees, leaseholders. They will use their license plate as their main credential to enter and exit the facility. So as they approach, the license is scanned by the camera and the barrier will open automatically. If the plate is unreadable, if they have a bike rack or some other obstruction, they'll scan a proximity card, which is their backup credential to get in and out. As a question that may come up, what if my prox card is used by somebody else and then my license plate shows up? The system is smart enough to know that that prox or that license plate's already in, so only one vehicle can get in or out at the same time. The transient customer, this is your daily customer, your visitor, hourly basis, anyone that's not a registered user in the system. When they approach, they'll take a ticket from the machine. The license at that point is scanned and it is tied electronically to that ticket. If that customer goes to pay at the pay on foot kiosk We'll get into that a little bit further later. Or if their ticket is validated by a merchant or an office department. When they approach the exit, the license plate system will see that they have paid or been validated. And so it'll automatically exit, open the gate so they can exit. And that'll expedite the excess process tremendously. Now for pre-registered customers or guests, this would be somebody who makes a reservation through the Park mobile app or other system. When they drive up, they'll have a QR code that's emailed to them. They can present on their phone. And if they don't have that technology, perhaps they can have it printed and it'll scan that at the same as well. And that's how they will enter and exit the facility. Quick visual of that transaction flow. So again, you drive up, the license plate is scanned. If it's a registered user, it'll raise the gate and they'll enter. And then at the exit, again, it'll scan their plate and open the exit. If they're not registered, they'll drive up and they'll take a ticket from the ticket machine, and then they can pay at the pay on foot kiosk, which will be in the elevator lobbies, or they can be validated by a merchant or an office. When they get to the exit, again, if that plate has been paid, the gate will open. If not, they have the option to make payment via credit card at the exit. For the APGS description, as they approach the entry, again, they're going to take a ticket, and you'll see on this ticket, the license plate LFW 4703 was already registered and printed on the ticket for human readable purposes. As they enter the parking facility, they'll see a sign showing the available parking spaces on all the levels of the facility. And as they approach decision points, which would be a turn, left, right, straight, they'll see signs showing available spaces at those turning directions. As they drive down the singular aisle, they'll see lights over each parking space that indicates if they're available or occupied. And you can see on that bottom slide, there's just one green light showing. If you were driving along, you wouldn't notice that there's an empty parking space there. This is just a photo quick of the center-based license plate recognition camera systems. They're mounted right over the drive aisle, and one sensor per light can register up to 6 of those parking spaces. So it'd be looking 3 to the right and 3 to the left. And if all those spaces are full, it'll show red. If there's one available, it'll be green. For the bid process, what we did was we put together a schematic drawing of the actual signs that we would propose for East Rosemary Street. This is just a representation of those. The roadway sign is the one that you would see as you approach the entry to the garage. It'd show you the spaces on each of the levels. And then, of course, the turning direction signs, and the UF is upper floor signs. Additional parking guidance benefits. I know the town is very interested in data. This image on the left shows you what they call a heat pattern. This shows you that those spaces right in the middle are always full and or repeatedly emptied and full. So they're the prime parking spaces. And then, green ones, of course, are still available. The chart on the right shows you the occupancy per hour, per day. And of course, that's completely sortable in different curriculi. Here are the images of the pay on foot machines. This is not the selected versions. These are just random photos that I had from my database. The point here is that the customer who has the parking ticket that pulled when they entered the facility, when they go to pay at this pay on foot, it'll give them the option to ask if they need to locate their vehicle. And if they do say yes, then the automated parking guidance system and the parking system itself will interact, and it'll show a map of the floor where they're parked, and it'll give them directions to walk and find their vehicle. Quick review of the RFP process. Again, this is all in January. We started on January 8th with the RFP being issued. We had a pre-proposal meeting, which was held virtually so that we could review the drawings and answer questions. And then the RFP due date was January 29th. So we got that all done in 3 weeks, which is quite expeditious. Here are the specifications that we created for that. The one on the left is for the parking system, and the one on the right is for the automated parking guidance. They are different specifications, but we issued them together so that they had that interaction that we discussed earlier. Additional bid documents, we have the instructions to the proposers on the left. This gives them the due dates, the requirements of the proposals. The image on the right on the top is an image that we created to show where the signs were going to be located in the actual Rosemary deck. And then bottom right is a bid proposal form, which gives us apples to apples to make sure that everybody quotes the exact same system and quantities. After we received all those, we put together a quick bid summary for the town. That's the memo on the left. And we also put together a bid leveling spreadsheet showing the different vendors and how they were represented compared to each other against the cost and features that we had requested in the system. The next steps are recommendations, and the big question, which vendor to award the contract to. So it was determined that the town would create a technology selection committee. This committee would be created by one member from Technology Solutions, 2 members of the Economic Development Department, and 3 members of the Parking Services Department. The selection committee will, when they create a recommendation, that recommendation will be provided to the general contractor on the project, and the general contractor will then include the technology recommendation in the overall project. And that is my presentation.
Thank you very much. Can you bring us back to full screen?
Got a couple more slides unless there are questions, Mayor.
That's Ryan.
So for the cost on all this, excuse me, it says in the packet, it says the overall cost could range from $250,000 for the same base walk-up pay stations to $1.3 million. So are we looking at $250,000 for the base pay stations we use now, and an extra 400 and something if we add the parks, and then an extra 500 to 600,000 if we use the APGS? Is that how it breaks down?
Roughly, that is correct. But the one thing that Jeffrey and I were talking about when we met today to go through the presentation is I think it's fair for council to understand if you went back to the base technology and just bought those same meters, it would require us having a full-time person patrolling the deck because there's no way to prevent people from just driving in and parking and not paying. And that's part of the benefit of having the gate system is not only the data it produces, but it basically is a self-operating deck at that point because you can't just drive in and pay with the walk-up stations. And that's part of the reason we're recommending it, because you would have to have staff patrolling the deck all operating hours when it was open.
Got it. So are any of these costs for the tech included in the original deck pricing, or are these all add-ons?
So there was no parking equipment in that original price. And so there's an evolution of how that's a really tricky question, because when we started out this process, we started out by using an estimate that McAdams gave us on how much it costs per space to build a deck. Then we added in land costs. And so it wasn't until late summer, early fall that we had even a preliminary estimate or projection of cost. And that early preliminary projection of cost did not include the technology.
Okay. And my final question is, if for some reason, if we didn't want to pay for the APGS system right now, but might consider it in the future, would that be something we would want to install conduit for now as a cost savings, or wouldn't matter?
Jeffrey?
Yeah, I can take that. Certainly that is an option. The general contractor at this point in time would install conduits that would run up through the parking deck to the individual floors, which is required for the parking guidance system because it is on those individual floors. But it would stop there. And that cost is going to be absorbed by the general contractor in advance of the automated parking guidance system. And so, yes, the APGS could be deferred.
Thank you. Ms. Gu, then Mr. Parker.
So I think the cost that you gave, the basic installation, like purchase and installation cost, is there information about maintenance cost? What kind of like service we need to purchase, and what kind of like technician or what kind of tech support we need to in place in order to run the system? Can you give us some description of what would that look like, how it is going to run, and how expensive it's to run them?
So those figures were included in the council packet. They were in the spreadsheets that we provided from the bid documents. We asked each submitter to tell us first year of operation and then continued year of operation for full maintenance. Jeffrey may be able to add to that, but it was included in those spreadsheets that we put in the council packet.
Yes, and I will elaborate on that a bit. So the point of putting that in is so that you can see a total cost of ownership. And I believe we went to a full 8-year term. But those maintenance and service costs are selectable at the year of the contract anniversary, right? So the base bid system comes with a 1-year warranty, full service, preventive maintenance, and on-site service technician. After the first year, the town would have the option of selecting an additional year of that service, which would then be an operating expense. And if they found that the full maintenance and service and warranty were not warranted, in other words, the system runs great all the time, we don't need to have this, you could take it, go to a time and materials and not absorb that. But it is good to have a fixed expense cost for budgeting.
Mr. Parker?
Yeah, one of the things I'm struggling with is without knowing where we are with the total project cost, it's hard for me to say, I mean, I'd like the best. I always want to get the best, and I can't always afford the best. And my concern, in order for me to make a decision as to how much I want to spend on this, I need to know where we are on the total project cost. If we're under the budget that we had before, then I'm more likely to want to spend more on this technology. If we're hearing that we're over our initial project estimates, then I'm obviously less likely to be willing to spend on this technology. So I'm really kind of concerned that we're trying to make this decision that is, potentially, $1.3 million, $1.2 million, without knowing what our total budget looks like and how and where we will wind up with the total budget if we make this decision.
So that's a really great question. And we talked about it internally with the project team. We talked about it as town staff and how to approach this. And because there are still issues that are unresolved, whether it be the North Street design or the North Street entrance or, the cost of the deck, it was hard, to know what that was going to be. And, in a perfect world, we would have liked to have been at that place where we had finalized everything and this was just the only option left. But because it affects the deck design, we knew we had to have an answer on whether you wanted to go with any level of this technology or not. And just for clarification, the bids came in for both technologies are roughly $950,000. If you went with both, it's only about $500,000 if you just go with the park system by itself. And that's what we're recommending, is that you just consider that tonight, and then you make the APGS decision when we come back with a budget update after we've redesigned and finalized all the issues.
So we can split the decision and it doesn't screw up the project schedule or anything.
That's right. We need the lane decision and whether you want the base park equipment tonight, and we can add in the APGS. It's not too late, and we're presuming it's probably late April, early May when we bring you the final construction budget. And so at that point, we can still make a decision because we haven't begun construction to add that APGS system back in, and it should not affect anything dramatically.
Well, one last question is, we have existing technology, in our parking lots and in the 140 West deck and all that. Is there any way that, this new system and this deck can in any way be integrated with what we've got, or are they just two separate systems that are always going to be two separate systems unless we make a decision to spend a great deal of money upgrading?
So my presumption is that they would remain two separate systems. Jeffrey, you may see it. You may have something to offer on that, but those standalone meters have limitations. You experienced the limitations on those meters as we were going through exploring the background data for this project. And that's part of the reason we went in this direction, was because we felt council wanted better data from this system. If parking has the ability to be a profit center for the town, we need to make sure we've got good management tools to make sure we're managing it the right way as we go forward. But we would figure out a way to combine those technologies. One of the things we've talked about in the future is maintaining a quarterly dashboard on the town's parking website that gives anyone who wants to know the current information about parking status and throughout downtown and the usage of the systems. And we would figure out how to combine the two for that data.
Okay. You had a couple more slides to show us, and then we can ask for if anyone from the public wishes to comment.
So the next steps are to return to council in April for our final construction budget and authorization of the bonds, authorize the construction contract probably at that same time, and then we would return, and not to council, but would begin closing on the properties in early May. And we're looking, based on our construction management team this morning, we're talking about at least commencing demolition and site prep in late June, and then beginning full-blown construction on the inside of 90 days after that. So we're on a path, and if you make a decision that you want to consider the 3 lanes and the base technology, they will begin a redesign, and we'll resubmit to DOI to keep this schedule as it's currently projected. And again, the recommendation is that council adopt the 2 resolutions, determine the number of lanes on Eastern East Rosemary entrance, and determine the parking technology for the deck. And the resolution again calls for you to authorize the parks system tonight. And when we come back with the next budget update, we would ask you to consider the APGS system at that point with that fuller picture of what we're talking about from a budget standpoint.
Thank you. I know there's some members of the public that are wishing to speak. So if you are wishing to speak, please use the raise hand function and Mr. Parker will help bring you over. I saw we had Mr. Harrison.
Mr. Harrison seems to be the only one who wishes to speak with us.
Okay.
I've unmuted myself.
Good. Welcome.
Thank you. And get myself visible too. Well, it's okay. 2 things on this project. I've been watching it from afar. I have a sort of a bias for anything Clay Grubb endeavors to do. This has been the most challenging to like. But it's going to be probably a good set of changes for downtown. The simple questions I have is, one, on the parking technology. I didn't really hear any way for a user to encounter that technology without a smartphone. And if there is, it'd be good. I mean, it will slow people down not to use one. It'd be nice if there was an option to that. And that may not, all of you will probably use a smartphone if you want to park there. I may as well. The other is, and I had some back and forth with council members Parker and Ryan probably earlier in the year, which is this doesn't seem to improve Rosemary Street very much for bicycle movement, for bicycle commuting, because it is somewhere where people head into Carborough, particularly. It's a very good way into Carborough. Sounds like it's pretty much the same as it is right now. Maybe some sharrows could be added to the very few that are there right now on the outer lanes, if there are 3 lanes. But it's they're 11-foot lanes. It's kind of crowded. It's going to be only experienced cyclists who will want to do it. And it's our street. It was something I was happy to learn early on, is that we do own Rosemary Street. I hate to let the opportunities go by because they're so hard to get on a state street. You basically on a state street, you basically have highway uses. But just wanted to put that in. There may be a response, but I don't know what it is.
So town staff did look at all of the options for bike lanes. We met as a team several times. Then we met with Brian Peterson, and Brian presented to council what the options would be. And so we will be calming Rosemary Street down if we go forward with design recommendations that Brian made. And we also will be creating a refuge for the pedestrian crossing mid-block coming from the deck over toward the park or the 139, 136, 137 building. So we think it will be an improved condition, but we have limited right-of-way and limited street width. And so we had to take that into account. And because of turning movements, there weren't a lot of options when we explored actually putting the bike lanes on the street. And so that's what we've presented to council. And I'll ask Jeff if he can make any comment on the smartphone question related to the technologies we're looking at.
White, is there actually going to be speed control devices? I mean, speed tables or anything like that in the street?
No, what we're talking about doing is painting the center lane a different color from the asphalt.
Oh yeah, good, yeah.
To give it a feeling of being narrowed and controlled, so people don't feel so comfortable using that for much. And calming it was the biggest intent, so that it felt comfortable being a mixed traffic condition.
Of course, the beer trucks will still use it.
We don't usually have give and take when we have public comment, Mr. Harrison, you know that. Thank you. Okay.
Appreciate Dwight answering.
All right. Thank you. We did have a question in the chat about when overly large vehicles, will there be separate spaces for overly large vehicles and compact cars? And what do you do when somebody parks their car wrong or takes over more than one space?
If I may, this is Jeff with Walker Consultants. I want to go back to Mr. Harrison's first question about the smartphone. There is no technology required by anybody to use the system. So a person would drive up to the entry and they would push or wave your hand for a ticket, so you don't have to touch the machine. You would take that ticket, and if you're going somewhere that's going to be validated, then they would be validated and they would leave. No smartphone required. And if they are making payment, the pay on foot devices that we have proposed for the system, not only would they make payment with credit card, but they also take cash. And because of the current rates for the town of Chapel Hill being non-flat dollars, these will take coin as well, and they will issue change. So somebody would be able to park and make payment and leave with no technology other than their vehicle and their cash. As far as the spaces, I don't know that that has actually been finalized, but yes, typical design of a parking deck would have what we call normal spaces, which are the 9-foot wide, and then compact spaces, which are 8.5 feet wide. I don't know if Walker has the authority to be making the striping for this project, or if the architect is. Walker does not recommend as many compact spaces as some folks would like, because we don't find them to be as accessible, and people do, as mentioned, park kind of across the line, and then you end up losing a space anyway. So there's not a point in making too many of those.
Thank you. All right, bring it back to council members. Comments? All right, well, we have a plan before us. I'll just say, I'm very interested in us helping with flow in and out of the deck. So I would highly recommend council consider the 3-lane version here at the expense. And then we can take them 2 separate motions if you like, with the lanes being the first one. And then we can do the technology on the second. Is that okay with council? All right, is there a proposal for the lanes?
I move we accept the 3-lane proposal.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Parker, second by Mr. Nguyen. Any more discussion on this item? Roll call vote. I will say that Ms. Anderson's not feeling well, so she's left the meeting. So to note that. All right, Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Boyancy.
Aye.
Ms. Gu.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan. Couldn't hear you.
Aye.
There you go. Ms. Stegman, sorry.
Aye.
The mayor says aye as well. Thank you very much. All right.
I move we accept the parks system as the base technology while preserving the option to add the, I forget the APG, whatever it is, should funding become available.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Parker, second by Ms. Stegman. Any more discussion on this item? Ms. Gu?
Well, I thought my understanding is there is the base technology, and there's the second level is including the monitoring, the gate.
Yeah, that's parks.
Okay, so we are talking about the 3 options. Which one are we voting on?
The middle one.
Well, because there was a base which was 250, the parks, which is another 4, and then the APGS, which is another 5 or 6. Right. So we're assuming the base and then voting on whether we want the parks. Is that correct?
Well, you don't get base and parks. You get parks instead of the base.
White, is that true?
That's correct. So you're voting, I don't remember the number off my head because I don't have the council memo in front of me. You're agreeing that we're going to spend roughly $500,000 on at least the parks system. And again, to reinforce the fact that if we went back to that base technology, you would have to have staff on top of the $250,000. So we feel it's more financially feasible and better data to at least have that parts system. And we would like to have the APGS system, but we're not recommending it tonight. We just need to redesign the deck for the parts system, the gates, and shortening the deck to accommodate the laneage right now. And then when we come back to you with a budget update, you can make a decision as to whether the APGS system is something you want to consider.
Okay, yeah, thanks for clarifying, because I thought it was the 3 were cumulative from our earlier discussion, but not the 250. Got it.
All right, are we clear? All right, Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Boyancy.
Aye.
Ms. Gu.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
I can't sing that well.
Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for that. Thank you for this information. And we will look forward to you coming back. I will also share that I was to ask whether we were going to be demolishing the old deck during graduation weekend. So I can send back that we are not going to be doing that from the schedule you proposed, because graduation weekend of May 17th, 18th, and 19th, they're thinking they might need a few parking spaces. So there we go. All right. Yep. Thank you all. That brings us to our next item, item number 10, introduction of bond orders for 2/3 bonds and a call for a public hearing for the issuance of the 2/3 bonds. We have Ms. Oland with us.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Amy Oland, and I'm the Director of Business Management. I'll be presenting this evening on the town's capital program and the proposed 2/3 bond issuance. My presentation has 13 slides and should take about 10 minutes. The purpose of tonight's agenda is to introduce the bond orders for the proposed 2/3 bonds and for Council to adopt a resolution setting a public hearing for March 24th. Tonight, I'll be defining what 2/3 bonds are. I'll describe the funding process for referendum bonds and compare them to the 2/3 bonds. And I'll go over the next steps in the financing process. So what are 2/3 bonds? 2/3 bonds are general obligation bonds that do not require a public vote. If we do not issue any GO bonds, general obligation bonds, in the prior year, then in the next year, we are able to issue an amount equal to 2/3 of the amount of general obligation principal that we paid down that year. So what does that mean? In fiscal year 2020, we did not issue any new general obligation debt. We did have a refunding of some general obligation Build America bonds, but that is not new debt. That was just getting a lower cost for those bonds. So in 2020, we did not issue any new bonds. So we were then eligible for the 2/3 bonds. So to determine how much we're eligible for, we look at the total amount of principal we paid in fiscal year 20, which was $4,812,000, and we take 2/3 of that amount, which is $3,208,000. We round that down to the nearest issuing amount, which is in $5,000 increments, and so we get $3,205,000. So if we look at what the average debt service for a borrowing with a 20-year life, we look at about $198,000 per year over the life of the loan. So the proposed uses for the 2/3 bonds. So the first bond order is for parks and recreation facilities in the amount of $1,155,000. There are several projects proposed for that use. We are proposing the Cedar Falls Park Tennis Complex reconstruction, the Hargraves Park tennis improvements, the Ephesus Park technical assessments and tennis and pickleball court repairs, Hargraves Park playground surface replacement, the A.D. Clark pool improvements, Hargraves Center ball field renovation, Umstead Park basketball court, and the Homestead Aquatic Center pool improvements. The second bond order is for public safety in the amount of $550,000. These funds would be used to replace engine 33, which is a 2002 HME, as a frontline vehicle. The existing truck would be moved to reserve status. The third bond order is for streets and sidewalk projects in the amount of $1.5 million. These funds would allow the town to begin addressing significant backlog of needed maintenance on about 2/3 of the town's streets, and would be used for high priority sidewalk projects throughout the town. So the schedule. We came before council on February 24th to adopt the preliminary resolution. At today's meeting, we are introducing the bond orders. We are asking council to set a public hearing for March 24th. On April 7th, we'll come back and ask council to adopt the bond orders and to adopt the issuance resolution. And that issuance resolution would be for both the 2/3 bonds and the first issuance of the affordable housing bonds. So we would try to do this at the same time. And the remaining steps would also follow for both the 2/3 bonds and the affordable housing bonds. So we're asking for LGC approval at their April 13th meeting. We have a proposed bond sale date of April 27th, and then we would hope to close on the bonds on May 13th. And then our goal would be to come back before council at the next regular meeting, perhaps on the 19th, not sure if we'll make that timeline, or the next meeting on June 9th, where we would ask council to recognize the bond proceeds and appropriate those funds for use. So our planned issuances, as I mentioned, we are looking at the affordable housing, the first issuance of the affordable housing bonds. We have $10 million of authority, and we're looking to issue $4.755 million. And then the 2/3 bonds, which we have the 3.205 in terms of the amount that we've paid off from prior year bonds. And so we would be looking to issue the total amount that we have the authority for. We've looked at the cash flows for the next 12 to 18 months in regards to the referendum for affordable housing. And we think that that's the amount that we have at the ready to be able to spend down over the next 12 to 18 months. So unlike 2/3 bonds, referendum bonds have only one council approval step for issuance, and that's the adoption of the issuance resolution, which we're proposing to come back before council on April 7th. The first two steps have already taken place. The first being when council approved us going before the voters for the general obligation bonds in November of 2018. And then the second was when the public did vote to approve us issuing those bonds, again, November 2018. And so the last step is the approval by council on April 7th. So when we talk about issuing debt, there's two factors to consider. It's the authority and the capacity. So the first is the authority. The authority is similar to a pre-approval for a loan. It means that we have the potential to borrow, but not necessarily the ability to pay it back. So the authority for referendum bonds is when we go before the voters and they approve us to issue those bonds. The authority lasts for 7 to 10 years. It's a 7-year authority, and then we have the ability to ask for a 3-year extension, and it's approved through the public vote. The authority for the 2/3 bonds and the installment financings that we do are approved by council action only, and it's on an issue by issue basis immediately prior to the timing when we're looking to issue those borrowings. So the second factor in issuing debt is the capacity. The capacity is the portion of someone's income that can be used to pay off their debt. The town has set up a portion of our income as the 9.8 cent dedicated tax rate that we have that's going to the debt management fund. This plus any other revenues that we have in the debt fund, which include the transfer from the parking fund for the Wallace deck and the 140 West deck debts, and the Ephesus Fordham tax increment finance, go into the debt management fund and are what allows us to be able to pay back our debt. So the town's capital program involves a multi-year planning process. However, it's important that we have a flexible plan so that we can react to changes in cost, needs, and opportunities. One of the ways to achieve the flexibility in the capital program is to adjust the timing and sequence of the projects. We are here today talking about the proposed 2/3 bonds as a result of some additional capacity in the debt fund as a result of the delay in the Municipal Services Center project. So the next steps for tonight, the next steps for the 2/3 bonds is the introduction of the bond orders. So I will introduce each bond order by reading its title and the recommendation that council adopt the resolution to set a public hearing for March 24th and the authorization of the filing of a sworn statement of debt. So I will now introduce the bond orders. The first bond order is a bond order authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds for park and recreation facilities in the maximum amount of $1.155 million. The second order is bond order authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds for public safety in the maximum of $550,000. And the last order is bond order authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds for streets and sidewalks in the maximum amount of $1.5 million. So this concludes my presentation. Does council have any questions?
You can give us full screen back, please.
Sure. Maybe.
Are there any questions from council members? Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item?
Not that I can see.
Okay. Comments back from council members? Ms. Gu?
So for this bond, I do not or let me put it this way. So how does that I mean, compared to the presentation that we had in our retreat with regard to the capacity, the payoff rate, and how is that going to impact the affordability of those bonds, especially given that we're going to take on this construction bond for the parking deck as well?
So we talked about this a little bit at the retreat. We were talking about the additional capacity that we now have in the debt fund, really as the result of the timing of projects shifting later than we had originally planned. And Davenport did show some information that spelled out what that looked like in relation to our debt ratio. So I think the question is, we have the ability to pay this back. We have the capacity to pay it back. This is not an issue. It makes sense for us to do this based on, interest rates are really low. We have a long list of projects to do. So we talked about there were several options where we could start now with some of the projects that are in the queue. They proposed, a timeline where we did some now and some a couple years from now. And we had talked about coming back before council in the very near term to start talking about longer term capital planning. So the question really, the one thing to consider, the only impact really that I see this having is that it does put us slightly over some of our target debt ratios that we adopted in June of 2019 with the financial policies that council adopted. That being said, as Davenport also described, those are council approved policies. And as long as council recognizes that, and upfront, knows that we are going over those thresholds, but we have a plan to pay it back down and to get back under those ratios. So it would only be a couple of year period where we would be over those targeted ratios. The rating agencies, they're not concerned about that. So it's really just having a plan in place is really the key. And I think we do. We're just taking advantage of the ability to issue these, which are really low interest, fairly easy process to issue. So it's in our favor to do this now. And then just having the plan to make sure we are able to get that paid off and recognize that we are going over those thresholds, but it's only for a short number of years.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Ms. Stegman?
Thanks for this. I think it's a great opportunity to take advantage of the very low interest rates. I know many people will be really happy to see the tennis courts on that list. There's been a lot of interest in getting those repairs, so I'm really glad to see that. Also, just to note, I was happy that some of the street resurfacing and repair will include adding some bike lanes. So that's exciting that we can get some of that strategy moving forward as well. And with that, I move R9.
Second.
Hey, it's been moved by Ms. Stegman and second by Mr. Parker. I just want to thank Amy Owens for working really hard to figure out how to make this all work. She keeps her eye on those interest rates. She keeps her eye on refinancing. She keeps her eye on figuring out exactly how we can borrow and how much and how we're going to pay it back. So we appreciate her due diligence in your department. I know you don't do it all by yourself, but thank you.
Team.
All right. Motion on the floor. Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Boyncey.
Aye.
Ms. Gu.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
Mayor says aye as well. Motion passes to set the public hearing. So we'll look forward to hearing about this again. And the public is always welcome to comment, sending emails and contacting us. All right, that brings us to our last item on the agenda tonight. Consider response to petition for limited scope review of conditional zoning modification application for 1751 Dobbins Drive. If you'll remember, Ms. Anderson's.
Apologies for interrupting, Mayor. Could I ask for just one quick procedural point before we proceed on this one, which is that Councilmember Anderson, I should remember that name, has been excused, but could I ask for a quick voice vote to establish a majority approving her excuse from this meeting? That's for purposes of calculating a majority.
Okay.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Parker.
Second.
Second by Ms. Stegman to excuse Ms. Anderson officially. We'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Boyncey.
Aye.
Ms. Gu.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
And the mayor says aye as well. Thank you.
Many thanks.
All right. Ms. Johnson.
All right, good evening. I'm Judy Johnson with our planning department. Give me just a second to get this going. I have a very brief presentation. Just a couple of slides. Want to walk you through a response to a petition that we received on February 24th. So the petition before you tonight has two components, and you did get in your a late afternoon packet this afternoon some revisions to these now two resolutions, Resolution 10 and 10.1, that we're asking the council to consider two aspects limiting the scope of the review of this project, as well as considering a reduced or a waived fee. And just want to remind you, this site is located over on Dobbins Drive by Cosgrove Apartments and adjacent to the Planned Parenthood there. A conditional zoning application was approved by council back in November of 2019 it was a 5,747 square foot office building. As this applicant has been moving through the process, developing their construction plans, the cost of the building per square foot has been coming up at a rather high rate. And they have asked, their petition was asking to pursue increasing the size of that building. Our land use management ordinance limits the increases to a 10% for an administrative approval. The proposed request before you is slightly over 25%. They're requesting it to go up to a 7,500 or 7,500 square foot office building. There would be really no change in the site. The additional square footage would happen in the rear of the building, and we have not reviewed the application at this point, but that's just from the perspective. So with that all being considered, the request is to limit the scope of the review for the larger office building to just the Planning Commission as well as the Town Council. The applicant has also requested a waiver of the fees. The base fee for a conditional zoning application is about $8,500, and then there's a $30 per square foot. And the fees, as you know, are charged on the cost of our services. We're looking to recover our cost recovery program. Currently, town only has policies to waive fees for affordable housing, as well as town projects and for service projects associated with nonprofits. Typically, it's an Eagle Scout project type of thing is what we waive fees for. We do have some staff a little bit concerned about the precedent of waiving fees completely and the impact on future requests. So, and with that in light, we did separate these two resolutions into 10 and 10A to separate the limited scope versus the reduced or waived fee. And I did see Councilmember Ryan sent in that we did have a little typo on the 10 where there was a and in there that was just kind of hanging there. So we would want to strike that from that resolution. And that is all I have for a presentation this evening, and happy to answer any questions.
You'll bring us back to, yeah, thank you. Ms. Ryan?
So just a clarification, what exactly is the fee that you're charging now, the $525, not the $52?
Yes, and we were off by a little bit of a factor of 10. So, yeah, the fee is, so it would be the fee that they would have in front of them is the $8,500 plus it's about $500 for the additional square foot. So a total of roughly $9,000. We were considering charging them for just the additional square footage as one way to look at that, as they have not too long ago recently gone through our process.
Okay, so just to make sure that I understand, you're not charging them an additional base fee now, just that square footage fee of the $525.
That is the proposal in front of you. That's in resolution 10.1.
Thank you.
Ms. Gu?
So given this project has been reviewed before, can you describe what kind of additional review will be required?
So there's limited review. So most of the review would just be in planning department. We just check the numbers, make sure they meet all of our standards, parking numbers, they're not necessarily changing any impervious, but the height and all those sorts of things. So there is a certain amount of staff that is associated with this, just simply the housekeeping of, entering the data and moving it through and preparing the memos that come to the Planning Commission as well as the council and that sort of thing. So there is most of the review would be held in planning as opposed to where typical it's town-wide almost review of a project.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anyone from the public wishing to make a comment or speak up on this item?
We have signed up. Keith Paul, followed by Trish Galfano.
Unmute.
Welcome. We can hear you.
Keith, how are you doing this evening?
Good, thank you. Welcome.
Hey, I just had a question about the process. This resolution does not, I don't see language in this resolution that specifically increases the maximum square footage allowed from the 5747 to 7,500. And it's mentioned in the staff report, but our conditional zoning permit, it's mentioned 3 times in our conditional zoning permit that our maximum is 5747. Does that get resolved at a later date, or should that be resolved at this point if this is passed?
And so that would be resolved when the project comes forward to the town council for their review and action.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw.
Okay, and then Trish Galfano.
Amy Harvey says that she doesn't see her here anymore.
Okay.
She had made comments earlier in the chat on the 1200 project. So
that she did.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I bring it back to council. I just want to say thank you for finding a way to help make this change for a minor adjustment to, which was more than minor, but an adjustment to the building. I think staff did a nice job coming back when we asked them to with something helpful here. So say council, Ms. Ryan.
I'll move R10.
Second.
That's been moved by Ms. Ryan. I heard Mr. Nguyen say second, I thought over there. Is that what you did? Okay. Any more discussion on this item? All right. Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Boyncey.
Aye.
Ms. Gu.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Ms. Stegman.
Aye.
Mayor says aye as well. Ms. Ryan, you want to move the next one?
R10.1.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Ryan, second by Mr. Nguyen. Any more discussion on this one? Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Boyncey.
Aye.
Ms. Gu.
Aye.
Mr. Nguyen.
Aye.
Ms. Ryan.
Aye.
Ms. Stegman. Mayor says aye as well. So I think that means unanimous. I think there's enough quorum for vote. I'm not sure how that all works. But, all right. Is that all you needed from us?
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Right. Good job, council. We had a lot of items this evening. Thank you for helping get through them all. We appreciate people watching the meeting and participating in the meeting. We have a work session next week. You're going to be looking at the Orange County Transit Plan. You're going to be looking at some revisions proposed revisions for the Glen Lennox project and maybe STR caps. We were trying to figure out if that's going to be the agenda, but we'll have a very active work session starting at 6:30 next week. Mr. Jones, you have anything else to share with us?
No, ma'am.
Thanks for coming to my rescue with the computer, you and Flo.
Anytime.
Thank you. All right. Good night, everyone. Meeting adjourned.
Good night.
Night. Night. Thank you.
Night. Be safe.
What happened to your computer?
I was adjusting it and the whole thing shut down. I don't know what happened. And it didn't apparently shut down.